An entitled Karen refuses to pick up her dog poop after her dog literally craps in other people's yards. But after she decided to do that one too many times in my yard, and despite the fact that I've given her multiple times to be a better person, I decided to get some revenge by blasting her with automatic sprinklers anytime they came close to my yard, causing her to get water, grass, and a lot of dog poop all over her outfits. And I've honestly never felt better about anything in my life because this Karen absolutely deserved it. Here's how it all went down. I live in a fairly large city with a lot of good dog owners, but every so often we get people, especially right after the pandemic, that are complete jerks about picking up after their dogs. Now, I have a security camera that faces the area where people like to let their dogs go to the bathroom. I'm never around at that time of day, but I can see who's letting their dogs do what in my yard at all times. One lady, who is the entitled Karen of the story, let her dog crap in the sidewalk area of the yard every single day. And no, she never even picked it up. I posted on the neighborhood network, but I got no response. I put signs up asking people to pick up the dog crap, but still nothing changed. My neighbor even screamed out, "Hey, pick up your dog's crap, lady," but still nothing happened. She still let her dogs go in my yard, right in front of my wife's car, every single day like clockwork. She told my neighbor once that she didn't have time because she had to walk her dog before she went to work. My neighbor said, "That's super rude not to pick up after your dog." But she looked this guy right in the eye and said, "Well, what are you gonna do about it?" And then she walked off. But my neighbor, being the kind person that they are, picked up the dog poop and threw it away from me. And then later that day, they told me about their interaction with this Karen and how rude they were, which is honestly just so baffling. Now, to shift gears, we had a dog not too long ago as well, which is sort of an understatement. We had a 250-pound dog who loved people, they loved dogs, they loved cats, and they loved kids. He was super friendly to everyone, and we left a doggy treat library up in his memory when he passed away 2 years ago of old age. His passing broke me, but the one thing that I learned is exactly how horrible our yard was, even before a human-sized dog used it as a laboratory every single day. I've spent some time fixing the lawn by replacing the grass with nitrogen-absorbing plants like microclover and other lawn-replacing plants that are highly resistant to dog urine, because we do intend to get another dog someday. My old boy, when he would go to the bathroom in the yard, he took massive dumps that would reach like 6 inches in height if he stayed in one place. I had a scoop shovel and a 14-gallon bucket half filled with sawdust, like I was some kind of elephant trainer, and I would go around the yard every day to pick it all up. When we went for walks, even when he was like a 90-pound puppy at 4 months old, I took grocery bags with plenty of poop bags with me on walks because he would poop multiple times, and I prefer not to have our neighbors think that a homeless person went to the bathroom on their lawn after we went by. When he passed away, I put up a little free dog treat library along with free baggies for the local dogs and their parents, because honestly, we had a supply of them. He ate as much food a day as the average teenage boy and loved donuts as much as Homer Simpson. He loved asparagus, oranges, as well as the doggy bits from steak. Plus, a dog treat the size of a hand was just normal size for him. The upshot is that what we had on hand when he passed away is roughly 8 times the normal amount a dog parent would have. And I didn't want it to go to waste, so we provided it for free until we ran out. I even have a small bucket nearby labeled that says, "If you have dog poop bags, please drop them here," because the raging debate of whether it's rude to drop tied-off dog crap bags in a nearby garbage can rages on the next door list every single year, along with a fireworks conversation that starts at around July 2nd and continues for the next 2 weeks. Now, trust me, there's a point to this, and that's to say that there's absolutely no excuse here from this entitled Karen. On top of that, I had previously met this woman and her dog when I was walking my old boy around the block. She is one of those people who walk their dog while surfing their phone and plugged into a podcast or a call at all times. And her dog is one of those long-haired, fluffy dogs that look like they've been run into a wall multiple times head first. It's also a massive jerk and is aggressive towards other dogs, even ones roughly 20 times its size. Every time we met walking, she barely registered her dog trying to bite mine until I would yell out and be like, "Lady, control your dog," and had to block it with my body. So poop bags were available. There were notices. There were people saying, "Hey, knock that off." But Lady Karen was still doing exactly what this Karen wanted to do. So I thought to myself, fine, we can definitely play that game if that's what you want to do. It was here that I started my research by checking my house security camera. She was always there at about 8 o'clock religiously on the dot. We're talking at like 8:02 or 8:03. She did this every workday, every single time, never on the weekends, and never after 8:04 in the morning. She was always dressed in a very nice business casual with expensive shoes and a purse or a sling, but never with any poop bags in hand. Well, I set up one of my Rainpoint Wi-Fi enabled automatic sprinkler hose type things and connected 2 high volume, highly visible water sprayers for that grassy area. And I had one on each side. One was facing the sidewalk from the house, with some overlap to the sidewalk strip set to a 180-degree semicircle, with the other one in the sidewalk strip facing the house, set to the same dispersal pattern. Now, the nice thing about RainPoint is that it's hooked into your house Wi-Fi, and you can control it anywhere, anytime, just by pressing a button widget on your phone. You can also set it up to like automatic watering times, but the fact that you can set it off remotely is more important here. So I set the timer to go off at 8:03 exactly and spray for 10 minutes on full blast. And by full blast, I mean I made sure to close off all other hoses and not start the dishwasher or laundry before I left the day at 7 o'clock in the morning. So the full experience was like a blast of water pressure that could be enjoyed by everybody. Well, the next morning, I excitedly turned on my remote viewing of my security camera at work. And here she comes, dressed more nicely than usual in her business casual, walking her aggressive jerk dust mop of a dog, her face in the phone and her earbuds plugged in with the volume up. The dust mop angles his way towards the same spot she always lets him take a crap. He starts to squat and then suddenly, the dual sprays of ice cold water catches her dog in the face and this Karen right at her waist. And this is full blast. The one from the house started first, and the one in the sidewalk strip started 10 seconds later. She then stood there screaming on the security camera for 30 seconds. She then stormed across the grass to pick up her dog, who at this point has been turned from a fluffy ball of perfectly groomed dog to a filthy wet mop with extra dirt. And best of all, as she turns to storm away with her dog, she slips on some fresh dog crap that her dog had literally just dropped, which was now getting blasted with water at a very high rate. She lands on fresh microclover that had been lovingly fertilized with composted steer manure from our family farm the day before. So she doesn't get injured, but when she gets up, her very expensive business casual outfit is caked in dog crap, as well as fresh green stains and steer manure. Well, this Karen eventually exits stage left screaming her head off. I then start laughing so hard, my boss has to come out just to ask what's the matter. I then kept a Nextdoor tab up in my browser all day, set to check for new posts from my specific neighborhood with keywords. And trust me, I was not disappointed. About an hour later, I saw a Nextdoor post talking about how horrible people start their watering during the time people are walking their dogs. And yeah, it's the entitled Karen of the story. Someone then replies to her thread saying, well, maybe just walk a different day or just go a little bit later. But of course, oh man, you don't understand. My dog is soaking wet and it ruined his grooming session for the week. Now I have to get him in and get him cleaned up after work. So I think to myself, okay, thanks for the heads up, Karen. The next morning, I tuned into my security camera at work and I had the same timer widget up. I tested it the day before remotely and I made sure the lag time was minimal on both the camera and the sprinklers. And sure enough, here comes the Karen and her stupid dog right on time. She's dressed up in business wear complete with heels and a full suit today, which you know for a fact might be a really bad choice. Now, to her credit, she is a bit leery of my yard, but she is checking her watch and watching the sprinkler. The dog then starts to squat at 8:26 in the morning, and it's right then that I hit the button. My security camera is about 30 feet away behind triple pane glass windows inside a house that we did extra insulation on this last spring. It has a crap microphone that barely picks up anything, but I could hear her scream of rage like a pair of wild foxes in heat running 2 feet from my head. Her dog was turned from a fluff ball to a wet mop once more, but this time he was still mid-crap, so when she grabbed him physically, I could see her trying desperately to avoid the poop torpedoes popping from his butt and flying into the air all across the sidewalk and the walkway to the street. Her phone then clatters to the ground and she breaks a heel stumbling over, with one final dog turd executing a perfect 360 double pike and landing on her blouse. Well, fast forward and the next day was a Thursday, and I popped open my browser to lay in wait. I then watch as this Karen comes down the street once again, absorbed in her phone and dragging her mop of a dog all along behind her. When they get to my house, the dog stops and will go absolutely no further. I see her turn around and tug on his leash, but he refuses. She stops, she looks at the area of the yard where my sprinklers are set up, she looks at him, she pulls at his leash again, and they begin walking towards the same area once more. And just before they get to the outside edge of my property, I turn the sprinklers on again. Now, the 3 seconds of lag means that by the time they're halfway to their spot that the Karen's standing at, they're about 5 feet inside the spray zone. And this dog darts his way out of there quick enough where she is startled and drops the leash. He runs off back the way they came, where she then runs after him in heels trying to chase after him. Well, fast forward and that Friday morning, this Karen is nowhere to be seen. The next Monday around 10 o'clock, I see this Karen lady's dog, but he's being walked by a younger woman wearing a t-shirt of a local dog walking service. She stops by my doggy supply library, she smiles, reaches down to pick up the poop, she tucks it in a bag and ties it off, and then walks on with the dog who looks much happier overall. After about 3 months, I no longer see this entitled Karen or her dust mop of a dog anywhere in my neighborhood. I guess guess she moved somewhere that she and her aggressive jerk of a dog can live in peace and crap wherever they like. Now, I still have the sprinkler set up, but now I tend to set it to run when nobody is around at like 4 in the morning, which is much better than weaponizing it against Karens who absolutely deserve it. Dude, this is some grade A, like perfect revenge. Holy crap. You thought of everything. You literally laid a trap for this Karen and said, oh, you want to crap in my yard? You want to poop on the sidewalk and leave it all over the place? Cool, man. Let's play that game. That sounds like fun. I can't believe after the first time she wouldn't be like, okay, I'm never coming back here ever again. Let alone the second or the third. Like, dude, take a hint. One time would be more than enough for me to be like, okay, I'm gonna walk my dog anywhere else. In fact, my neighbors calling me out for leaving dog crap everywhere, that would have been more than enough shame for me to be like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I need to figure my life out and become a better person. But no, this Karen just simply refused to give up. They were determined to be a menace to this neighborhood. So to that end, I love the fact that the original poster was so patient about this. They set this up and just waited like a sniper. They refused to give up. Like, I love the determination here. So good for you for getting this Karen put in her place, because this was hilarious. Because if anybody in this situation deserves this treatment, it absolutely is this Karen, because her attitude was horrendous and it needed to be shut down. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My parents are obsessive over my entire life, as they disregard my time, my privacy, and my space, even now into my adulthood. And at this point, I feel so suffocated that I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, to start things out, I'm a 23-year-old female and I've always had protective parents. As far back as elementary and especially middle school, I was sheltered beyond normal levels, to a point where I was and still am far less independent than any of my peers. And I was often encouraged or forced to not learn how to be more self-sufficient. I was never taught how to cook, do laundry, or any basic life skills. I was never allowed to have a bank account, never allowed to spend time with friends, literally anything. A lot of the time, my parents forced me to pull away from my friends because they, especially my mother, were beyond paranoid that my friends were faking liking me and would try to hurt me or get me in trouble. In college, my parents would come to campus multiple times a week for hours at a time. And for the first half of my college years, I was forced to come home every single weekend, so I never had time to make friends or get out at all. Now I'm a college graduate living on my own, with a job and with my own money, but my parents still don't let up. I'm never able to leave my apartment because my parents either text or call, or they'll just come and see what I'm doing. When we're on the phone, we don't even talk. We just sit there in silence for an hour or so, other than like occasional pointless things. And if there's ever a time that I don't immediately respond, they're either in a total panic or just completely outraged. At this point, it's getting to concerning levels. My parents took the spare key to my apartment, only asking after they already took it, and they won't give it back because they say they need the key. And when I expressed that I was uncomfortable with how little privacy I had, I was told, well, sorry, you have a problem with that, and they just completely ignored it. My parents come to see me most days, and sometimes they're just sitting in my apartment not leaving and taking my entire night after I get off of work. So in reality, I don't really get any free time. If I get upset that they take all of my time, I'm just met with them saying, well, what would you have done tonight anyways? Because I'm expected to go to work and then come home and do nothing so that they can take up my time. I have a parking pass for my apartment, and now I'm actually being expected to change it to be set up for their car so they can come up and sit for hours on end. They keep buying me actual junk that fills up my apartment, and I'm not allowed to get rid of any of it or say I don't want it. I'm not allowed to try and socialize outside of them, and most importantly, I'm not allowed to seek treatment I so desperately need for depression and gender dysphoria. Any expression that I'm unhappy is suddenly met with nuclear outrage and screaming, with them screaming by saying I'm unhappy and miserable too, and we have been for like 30 years. And possibly the worst part is that when I say that I'd like to have more free time to myself, all I get is either, well, I'm sorry, we're just so bad, or they'll say, well, you're all we have, so you just have to deal with it. So honestly, what do I do right now? Because this is seriously so frustrating. Oh my gosh, there are so many red flags here. First of all, if I was in your shoes, I would not frame this as them being protective parents. This is not protective parenting. This is like obsessive to a degree that is very disturbing. They have no right to sit in your apartment while you're not there. They have no right to put stuff in your apartment or to have a key to it or to have any kind of like parking pass to your complex. Like seriously, this is not something that they have any right to. You're a grown woman. Like you're allowed to have friends. They have no say in the matter. They also can't stop you from going to the doctor. Like these people are so intrusive in your life, it is honestly a little scary. So for me, I would not only contact like the landlord and be like, hey, these people have taken over my life, or at least like reach out to somebody who can help you, like maybe even the police in this situation, but I would make it very clear to to as many people as possible that this is my situation and I need help. And for me, I would make sure that my locks are changed, they have no access to my bank accounts or anything like that, while also taking the steps necessary to get the help I need from people around me who really can help in this situation. Because holy crap, this is seriously not normal. This is your apartment, this is your life, and you could do whatever you want. And the fact that they're trying to take that away from you, in my opinion, is very disturbing. My entitled neighbor waits till my fence is fully built to then demand that I move it back 6 feet, all because she misses the view she once had from her kitchen window. But after I tell her no, I'm not going to do that because that's some crazy talk, she starts getting really creepy by literally using a stepladder to watch me over my fence, as she's clearly pissed off that I shut her down in a way that she has never experienced before in her life. Here's what's going on. Okay, so a couple of months ago, I bought my first house. It's nothing fancy, but it's got a small backyard, and one of the first things I did was put up a wooden privacy fence so my dogs could run around without bothering anybody. Well, this is where my next door neighbor, who I will call Linda for the sake of the story, came over the next day after the fence was finished. She was holding a mug like she was about to give me friendly neighborhood vibes, but no, I got the exact opposite. She asked if I would mind moving my fence back by about 6 feet. I asked her why on earth I would do that, and this is where she told me it blocked her view from her kitchen window and she'd like to look out at the trees, and that if I moved it back, I'd still have plenty of yard. Now, I explained as politely as I could that the fence was entirely on my property line, since after all, I had the survey done, and moving it would literally give her 6 more feet of my yard for free. She then said that she had lived here for 15 years and had always had that view, so it was basically hers. But when she said that, I just started laughing. I literally couldn't help it. And then I eventually just said, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, ever since then, she has accidentally thrown her leaves and branches over the fence twice. And last week, I caught her trying to peek over with a stepladder. When I confronted her about it, she actually said to me that if I weren't so selfish, she wouldn't have to do it, which is honestly one of the stupidest things I think I've ever heard her say. Man, I can't stand entitled neighbors, especially ones who are going to try and sabotage your house all because you did something that they don't like. I know for a fact if I was in your shoes, I would probably start recording her or something like that, because what begins with her throwing leaves and sticks over your fence quickly becomes her trying to poison your dog or something like that. And someone in the comment section of this post pretty much said exactly what I was thinking. She's not looking at the trees, she is literally busy stalking you. That's all this is really about. She just wants to have the ability to be like, oh yeah, I want to watch what you're doing. Why else would she have a stepladder to look over the fence and stare at you, saying, oh yeah, you're just being so selfish. If you weren't so selfish, I wouldn't have to get a ladder, now would I? But it's lady, you literally showed your hand. You just proved that you don't care about the view and instead you want to watch what I'm doing, which by the way, that's super creepy, lady. Stay away from me, my family. I don't want anything to do with you. So clearly, putting up that fence was a really good idea, especially when you've got a new neighbor who's going to act like a complete demon probably for the rest of your time living there. Am I the jerk for refusing to give my sister my Wi-Fi password after she literally gave it out to her boyfriend, who then gave it out to a bunch of people, causing my router to slow down after 7 new devices were found out to be connected to it? Because now she's sulking around and my parents are pissed off at me, and at this point I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. I'm a 27-year-old male and I live in a small apartment above my parents' garage, and my 25-year-old sister still lives at home. We've always been fairly close, but lately she's been bringing her boyfriend around constantly. Well, a few months ago, she asked for my Wi-Fi password because the signal upstairs is better. I ended up giving it to her, but a week later, I noticed the internet was sluggish. Well, when I checked my router, I saw 7 new devices connected to it. It turns out she gave my password to her boyfriend just for one night, as she said, but then he gave it to his friends so they could download something really quickly. When I confronted her about it, she laughed it off. She said to me, "It's just Wi-Fi, don't be so dramatic." Well, after she said that, I decided to change the password. And when she found out, she got mad. She told my parents I was being petty, and now they're telling me that I should just share because it's family. Now, when they said that, I said I will happily share if she promises not to give it to anybody else. But she literally refused when I said that. She said, "Well, I can't control what people do." So with that, I just simply refused. And now she's sulking, and my parents are annoyed, and I'm now getting this nasty side eye at dinner. So seriously, I really need to know because this is seriously bothering me. Am I the jerk for not giving her the new password to my Wi-Fi router, since I literally just don't trust her anymore after she gave it away to practically everybody? Because at this point, I really just don't know if I'm in the wrong. Okay, I've got to be honest real quick. This is so toxic, it's not even funny. Your sister is just disrespecting you. Like, that's all this comes down to. Because, like, literally you trusted her to use the Wi-Fi in a way that wasn't intrusive. This was probably like an innocent request, like, hey, the Wi-Fi sucks, can I please use yours? And then you find out, oh yeah, by the way, there's 7 new devices connected to it. Oops, who did that? Sorry about that. Like, are you kidding me right now? That is so obnoxious. And it's so funny to me that she's trying to be like, oh, don't be so dramatic. I can't control what people do. This is not my fault. But it's like, no, it is your fault. It's literally your fault that the password got out to everybody. She's trying to sit there and be like, well, my hands are clean to the situation. But if she had not given the password out to her stupid boyfriend, then all of his friends wouldn't be on the network, literally slowing down the connection. Like, how is that fair at all for the original poster? They're the one paying for the Wi-Fi. Why should they have to suffer because their sister is irresponsible? Like, I just don't understand that. That really is so super annoying. So no, you're definitely not the jerk here. I would absolutely deny her from ever having my Wi-Fi password pretty much ever again for the rest of my life. She clearly can't be trusted with it, and she's just gonna give you the runaround, and chances are the boyfriend's gonna get it again, and then this cycle's just gonna continue. So in my opinion, I think you should cut the head off the snake and say absolutely not, because your sister doesn't sound responsible in the slightest.
Let me tell you about the time my crazy coworkers pooped all over the facility and left behind their special toys. So if you've been watching the I Am a Jerk channel for a while now, specifically malicious compliance videos, you know that we often talk about crazy things happening in the workplace or insane coworkers that make you want to leave your job. You will also know that I've mentioned my old workplace a lot in my commentary sections. So today I wanted to share a couple of personal stories about my own crazy coworkers from my old job. One that got fired for something you might not be able to guess, and another that quit due to embarrassment. So grab some popcorn and get ready for the show. First, I gotta give you a little background to set the scene. You see, I used to work in the automotive industry. This wasn't a factory setting, but we worked with a lot of different engines, mostly testing oils and different parts across the whole facility. Well, as you might imagine, this place was dominated by male employees. We did have women that worked at the facility, but they mostly worked in the office setting or in the chem lab. I honestly had never worked in a place that separated the men and the women as hard as this place did. But according to some of the lifers that worked there, one of them being a former boss of mine, the place used to get pretty crazy. Plenty of stories of male and female employees running off to dark places for their 15-minute breaks, if you know what I mean. Also heard a lot of stories about trains, which was odd since we worked on mostly car engines. Oh, and one thing I should point out about this workplace was that gossip traveled fast. If you got fired, by the time you made it out to your car, the whole facility already knew. Anyways, if those old timers were telling the truth, it doesn't surprise me why all 3 shifts were filled by mostly men now. And if you ever wanted to escape the sausage fest, your only hope was to join the Blue Coats, aka the Chem Lab. Now these positions didn't come available often because the Blue Coats had some pretty sweet schedules with weekends and holidays off. The grunts like myself worked a 24/7 schedule. But there's only one thing you need to know about the Blue Coats. They often attracted the weirdos, and 2 of these weirdos just so happen to be the stars of today's video. Obviously, I won't be using real names, but let me introduce Sally. Now, personally, I never met Sally, but I saw her around the facility a lot. She was just another blue coat to me. If you didn't work in the chem lab or knew someone that did, blue coats treated everyone kind of like they didn't exist. Have you ever seen that episode of Friends where Ross doesn't sit with Joey at the museum? It was just like that. Well, Sally seemed to be in the age range of late 20s to mid 30s, if I had to guess, and from what I've heard, she kept pretty much to herself. Good worker, would show up on time, didn't cause any issues, which is all you can ask from a coworker. Well, another thing that was apparent about Sally was that she liked to work out. She wasn't a gym rat or anything, but I think she just did it for health reasons and to stay in shape. We had locker rooms that were connected to bathrooms in the main part of the facility. Since we were a company that worked in a hot environment surrounded by oil, I think the locker rooms and showers made sense. Well, at least the lockers did. No one on the men's side ever used the showers. I mean, we had some coworkers that we hardly wanted to work with, let alone see them in their birthday suits. So with the men's showers not being used, it ended up being used for storage. I believe the janitor took over that space. I believe the situation was kind of the same on the women's side. No one was using the showers either. That was until Sally wrote an email asking about them. It seems that Sally wanted to start using the showers because she would work out before coming to work, and if she could shower at the facility, it would save her a bunch of time. I can't remember what shift Sally worked on, but I would have assumed that it was either second or third because there was a lot less people around to use the showers. Management okayed Sally's request to start using the women's showers, thus began Sally's new routine. She would arrive up to work in her workout clothes, hit up the women's showers, and appear like Superman in her blue coat ready to be a great worker. But just like Superman, Sally was about to find out what her kryptonite was in the form of embarrassment. One thing a lot of people don't know is when you go out of your way to get something okayed by management and start doing something nobody else does at the company, people start to take notice. And people took notice of Sally. Because one day, per usual, Sally showed up to work in her workout gear and headed to the locker room and once again came out with her blue coat ready to tackle the day. Well, later that day, another female employee just so happened to be using the bathroom and noticed something odd in the woman's shower. It seemed that someone had left behind a very noticeable toy that was similar to a body part that you find on most men. And said toy is usually used in the privacy of one's home. As you might imagine, this female employee wasn't going to do anything about this toy, but nothing was stopping her from telling everyone what she had saw. Word spread so fast that an email from management had to be sent out letting people know proper etiquette when it came to using the showers at the facility. Now remember, no one used the showers before Sally, so it didn't take the world's greatest detective to find out who this particular toy belonged to. After this happened, I personally never saw Sally again. But I know that she didn't stay with the company too much longer. I don't know if she was confronted by management or if she was just too embarrassed to show up to work. But with knowing how management has handled matters in the past, I doubt this was a fireable offense. So Sally probably left of her own free will. Or died from embarrassment. But finding Sally's little friend in the shower has nothing on the next story from my old job. You see, my workplace was once a place that lived in fear. People were scared to go to work and visit the one place they knew they could relax away from the pressures of management and the boringness of the job. The bathroom. This fear all started one day when an innocent coworker, who was most likely just going to the bathroom to check Twitter or Instagram, stumbled upon something that might still traumatize them to this day. What they had witnessed was someone had taken a big old crap outside of the toilet. Now I know what you're thinking. Really? Bit dramatic, don't you think? I've seen worse in a McDonald's bathroom. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of agree. It was a bit dramatic, but that was until it happened again. This time in a different bathroom located on the other side of the facility. Once the second incident got around the campus, people were shook. Everyone started to worry if they would be the next victim to find a massive pile of poop when they just wanted to post on how much work sucked on their Twitter account. The 2 p.m. bathroom parties were shut down because people didn't want to get caught in the crossfire of a drive-by pooping. By the way, the 2 p.m. bathroom parties were an actual thing. I have no idea why, but around this time every day, you couldn't get a stall if you needed to handle some business. As you might imagine in this situation, management wanted to keep this horrible information under wraps. They didn't want to start a panic at the facility. So I think they were trying to figure out ways to handle the situation without having to make a big deal about it. That was the idea until the next victim was claimed. This time, the pooping was too heinous for even management to ignore. Because some sad coworker was able to go into the bathroom, do their business, thinking they had escaped this menace, only to realize that a big pile of poop was waiting for them right in the middle of the sink. This poor soul has probably been traumatized from ever washing their hands again. Obviously, this was the last straw for management. A mass email went out through the whole company explaining that this type of behavior would be met with immediate termination and that they were investigating the whole situation. I personally never witnessed any of these crime scenes, but having heard about the whole thing, I told my coworker, "So is this guy a serial pooper?" Which did get a good laugh from everyone in the office, and people started referring to this person as the serial pooper around the facility. Now, I wish I could sit here and say that SEAL Team 6 stormed the campus and took down this serial pooper while he was committing his next crime, but I think it was a little more anticlimactic than that. I don't know exactly how this person, who we will call Brian, got caught. I'm pretty sure someone just ratted him out and management fired him. The random senseless pooping stopped after that, and the workplace seemed to go back to normal. But I know what you are thinking. What kind of person would do such a thing? Well, let me give you some insight to this serial pooper. Brian was one of those weird blue coats, but it wouldn't have mattered where this this guy worked, he would have just stuck out. You see, Brian looked like the Cali Bro character from Stranger Things, and he shared the same hobbies as that character did. I only knew Brian because a friend of mine got one of those open chem lab spots, and he started talking to a lot of people in there. Just to give you a little bit more description to the type of guy Brian was, he once went to a work luncheon at one of those restaurants that had a famous food challenge, and he showed up wasted and super high because he was going to attempt the challenge and thought that that would help. I actually saw video evidence of this, and Brian made it through half of the challenge before he barfed all over himself. He might have even went back to work after that, but I don't really remember that part exactly. He was definitely one of those type of dudes that did not care what anyone thought of him, and I think he just did this type of stuff because he thought it would be funny. I don't know anyone that kept up with Brian, so I don't know if he's still out there causing terror at new workplaces with his serial pooping ways, but let me know, who was the jerk in both of these situations? I hope you awesome listeners like this personal story of mine. If you did and you want to hear more stuff like this, let me know in that comment section. I mentioned plenty of stories of mine on the Jerk channel before, but I never go into crazy detail about them. Maybe next time I'll let you know about the time that I quit my job in glorious fashion. My entitled bosses wouldn't pay my overtime, so I studied the law and forced them to pay me back. This was in 2021. I worked at a company as an IT specialist. Actually, I was promoted to be more of a responsible tier 2 position a few months after this all happened. We supported one of Microsoft's products. I was working with this company more than 5 years with this one client. This client was a source of prestige for the company, a cherry on top. I am a very humble person, but what happened next made me less humble. Characters of the story. Andrew, the only tier 3 engineer on our project. His knowledge is enormous and many companies would fight for him to work for them. Dominic, a second tier 2 engineer promoted again a few months after I was. Greg, marketing manager, he was the person responsible for this client and agreement with this client. I was working with him the past 5 years, but somewhere between 2020 he left the company. He did eventually come back though. Solomar, Greg's boss, he was responsible for Greg and our help desk. And then there was Mr. B, the global director from the company we supported. He is the person to contact with technical queries. And of course there was me. You can call me Andy. This was a non-typical help desk that had 3 lines, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. About 5 workers on Tier 1, 2 on Tier 2, and 1 on Tier 3. All help desk workers, including me, working on this specific project were saying that the project is actually great. Management, on the other hand, was terrible. We were understaffed all the time. Plenty of poor decisions which I'll spare you from. The point is, we as technicians working directly with the client knew that this support is not working well, and that things are getting worse and worse. Basically, the end was coming. So the story starts with strike 1, which was fighting for money. When I was promoted to tier 2, my agreement did not change. I was still receiving the same amount of money as I did as a tier 1 technician. That is a promotion, is it not? But I did receive some more responsibilities. As an example, part of my new job was helping all tier 1s by being available after work. They could call me anytime if there was an issue that they were not able to handle themselves. Let's call that on-call. The on-call lasted 1 whole week and it was 24/7, and it happened twice per month. I did receive an additional $1,000 for each week spent on on-call. Since it happened 2 times in a month, that was an additional $2,000 per month. But of course, Greg considered that as a good argument to not increase my pay due to my promotion. To him, I was earning X before, now I'm earning X plus $2,000. If that's a promotion, then I'm a polar bear supermodel. So I continue fighting for my raise, but nothing ever changed. I was just talking. The big thing that changed everything was a project that needed to be done for the client. It was, I think, somewhere around October 2001. The project was a new configuration on the client's IT environment. I talked to Andrew about this, and he told me that this is too big and our agreement with the client does not cover this, so it should be paid additionally. So I called Greg to sort this out. The job is big, and due to its nature, I would need to work mostly on weekends. So will I get compensated for that? That is where he made the promise that I will be paid for my overtime. So I took the job and started working on it. Negotiations with the client about technical things and preparing to implement the new configuration took time, especially due to December holidays and the New Year. But eventually the client and he came to an understanding on how to do the configuration. After the new year of 2022, I started doing the actual work of implementing the new configuration. Without getting into technical details, the implementation did not go smoothly. The tools that I had to use were not working properly, which caused a lot of issues, and more overtime. I worked every weekend, sometimes less, sometimes more. As far as I remember, I had about 80 hours of overtime from January to February. Then that's when it hit me. I need to get some insurance that I will get paid. Despite that it was promised to me by Greg that I will be paid for my overtime, I personally started doubting that. Everyone working at my company knew that the company hates paying overtime. Scratch that. Does not pay overtime. And knowing how my so-called promotion was handled, I started to worry. Then I realized my overtime is not actually registered. I did not ask. I trusted Greg and no one told me how to do this. I'm new as a tier 2 and it was my first time I was doing the job like this. So I called Greg and asked him how I should register my overtime. He did instruct me on how to register my overtime. When he saw how much time it took me, he then tried to back down from his promise and I won't get paid. This is what I was afraid of. What this means now is 1, I am not getting the raise due to my promotion. 2, I'm not getting paid for my overtime. But I did not give up. So I went to the newly hired Greg's boss, Salamar. Salamar was hired when I was already working on this project, and he did not know as much, but he was Greg's boss. So I went to him. Salamar took Greg's side, so it seemed that I was out of options. During this whole project, since it began in October 2021, Greg's decisions were getting more stupid and worse. The end was getting closer and closer, and all the technicians felt it. But neither did Greg or Salamar. Decisions were so stupid that I even started thinking that it was an intentional sabotage. Salamar was hired to help and make help desk work, which means sort out issues with management, but he did nothing of the sort. All the time he was standing with Greg, who was mostly responsible for the situation we were in. Then I found out that it was actually Greg who interviewed Salamar for the job. Yes, subordinate choosing who to hire for his boss. Salamar quickly showed how spineless he was, and then we understood what happened. Greg hired himself a boss that would listen to everything he says to keep control. No way Salamar was going to help fix anything. So what about my overtime or my raise? Negotiations were ongoing. I did not change my position. I was promised paid overtime, and that is what I wanted. I was stubborn. Greg and Salamar's position was that they won't pay me, but they will give me days off for my work. I don't really use days off. Employers always had to force me to go on vacation, so this solution doesn't work for me. Besides, I was pissed. I was promised, and I will now make him keep his promise. I also had a second reason. Money was one of the reasons why my help desk was not working as it should, and I cared about the client. So this situation was a perfect opportunity to teach the management a lesson that if they want to keep the client, they need to pay. It was March 2022 at this point. Negotiations regarding my overtime produced no results. So I started doing something I did not want to do, which was check what the law says. I even paid for advice from a lawyer and the result was bad. The employer was right. He could force me to take days off instead of getting paid for my overtime. That is what is written in the law, but I think Greg did not know about this. There, however, was a second paragraph to that law. Yes, the employer can force me to take days off instead of paying overtime, but it had to be in the same fiscal quarter. For example, if I worked overtime in February and it was now April, which is a new fiscal quarter, then the employer can't force me anymore to take days off for my overtime in the former fiscal quarter. He must pay me. Let me remind you that this was March at this point, so a plan started to emerge. How to win? Simple. Wait. Keep talking, stall, and then April comes when they will have to pay for my overtime. All this time they were stalling to not pay me, but in fact they were doing harm only to themselves. And that is what I started to do. And then this happened. When working on a project on Sunday, I noticed that there was something wrong. Unless I fix it tomorrow, plenty of users won't be able to work. It was not as much my mistake. As I said, the tools were not working properly and that caused this issue. It was Sunday, almost night, so there was no one to call or notify, so I made a call and fixed it without notifying the client. That was the only way users the next day would be able to work. And this is how Strike 2 happened. Since I was a tier 2 now and Andrew and Dominic had to participate in weekly calls with the client, in these meetings we share news, IT talks, and we discuss things. Normal stuff. But this time the big boss, Mr. B, was angry at me. It was because I made a call to fix something that was wrong on Sunday and did not notify anyone of what I was doing. Okay, this is the client's environment. No one wants to come home and see that someone has rearranged their furniture. So I kind of understand that, but as I explained to him, there was no way to do it and it had to be done. Not fixing it would have caused a lot more issues. And it was Sunday night, so it was too late to notify anyone. Mr. B was actually a reasonable person, but for some reason that explanation did not work, which felt kind of strange. Well, I said okay and apologized. That was all I could say to Mr. B. After the incident, it did not take long for Salamar, aka Greg's minion boss, and Greg to take that argument in the talks about my overtime. After the meeting with Mr. B, I spoke with Andrew, and I won't share the results of the talk, but later Dominic called me. The call started with, "You do know that it was a setup, right?" "Oh yeah, because I did not accept Greg's terms to take days off over my overtime. Greg used his pal Mr. B to set me up as the worst employee of the month in order to force me to accept his terms. That made me more unnegotiable for a few days after that. I sent an email that either they pay me or I'll quit. You would think that due to the end is coming, they would have some brains to pay. Well, they didn't. So I handed them my resignation. Guess what? Even after sending the email, Greg and Salamar were surprised. The second part of March already started, so I needed to stall for a few more days to win my overtime payments. So what I did was take sick leave until the end of the month. Now, it wasn't a lie. I was neglecting myself and had some issues I needed to sort out. And that was it. I had won. They had to pay my overtime now. When an employee resigns, there is a period of time where they still must work before they leave completely. That period was 3 months for me, starting from the end of March. After my resignation, I had to work for 3 more months, but as I mentioned, I do not do off days. I had so many off days that for more than a month, the company had to send me on vacation. I used that time to start working in my new job. During this period, I was still working. Salamar asked me if there was an option for me to come work and that they will pay me instead of taking days off. I replied with a smile that I had already started onboarding at my other company, so no. When I saw the money for all the overtime reaching my bank account, I smiled and enjoyed my victory. Too bad I had to spend so much time reading the law to do it. After I left the company for good, I found that the client left the company as well. Andrew also left the company. I did not know, but he had resigned before me, and plenty of new shenanigans with paying employees emerged. And not only that, but I won. I don't think Mr. G ever actually looked into the law until he was forced by the CEO, but that's just my guess. CEO, of course, was shocked that the client left the company. There is a saying in Poland that goes, "Workers come to the company, but leave from the boss." But let me know, am I the jerk? Smart play by the OP here to go above and beyond to make sure that they got what they wanted out of the company. I did something similar when I left my old job. You see, depending on how long you have been at the company, you were given a bunch of vacation days. If you didn't use them, you lost them. Also, if for some reason you used all your vacation days before most of the year was over and you quit, the paid vacation days would be taken out of your last paycheck. So I had a bunch of vacation days that I wasn't using because COVID was going on and I couldn't really travel. No one really was. So when I made up my mind to finally quit, I used up all of my vacation days in October and November with the idea that once I returned, I was going to be handing in my 2 weeks notice, which would clear me from having to pay back any of my vacation time. So shout out to this OP here, because great minds think alike. Entitled Holistic Karen keeps harassing us at our winery, so we throw her out with her crystals. It's been 2 weeks, but the last holistic day at my job kinda traumatized me. Where I work now is significantly better than where I was before. People act out less at fancy wineries than they do at crappy sports bars in the hood. I'm lucky, blessed even, sure, but freaking A. I work at a winery where we do a ton of events. We have a day called Holistic Day. The woman in charge of Holistic Day is absolutely wonderful, not knocking her at all, but the crowd that comes in sometimes is questionable. They stand in a line to get their readings, and if our patio isn't open, they take up the entire dining room and we weave around them. We get a lot of campers on Holistic Day because if anyone wants a reading, they can show up at noon but have a 3 p.m. reading, and they will camp. We accept it for what it is. The winery is not consistent. Point being, we the servers do not like Holistic Day. The owner heard us joking about it the night before and was confused. Do you guys really hate Holistic Day? She's usually not there for it, so she doesn't know the experience, but she was the next day. And she got to experience it firsthand. So it started. All was normal, not a horribly crowded Holistic Day, thank God. How it's set up is basically like this. They take tickets in the main dining room and give everyone time slots. We're a restaurant, so people get their slots and they get a table. They get their tarot card readings or whatever in the side room. They also have some vendors that sell holistic crap. Oils, crystals, whatever. That's where Crystal Lady comes into play. Freaking Crystal Lady in her spiderweb shawl and spiderweb leggings. We were busy as usual for Holistic Day, so I didn't pay much attention to her. I noticed her hovering around the server station at one point, and she made me a little uneasy. I noticed one interaction with our 15-year-old hostess where she offered to get the manager. I didn't ask questions at this point because I was busy. Anyways, Holistic Day ended at 5 and Crystal Lady should have packed up. Now we're just dealing with normal tables, which is great. I stayed busy, but the organizer of the event left and Crystal Lady stayed. Why? Management was confused too, but in retrospect they didn't kick her out when they should have. We're a little too nice. The lady was lingering and she started talking to the tables. The relatively new hostess pointed it out to me and told me that this woman kept trying to talk to her and asked her where she lived, which is why she got the manager. She grabbed the owner mid-rush and the owner went straight up and told her to leave the hostess alone. Again, busy day. Owner was working the kitchen and our GM was working the bar. We all shrugged our shoulders at this lady, which was a mistake. Fast forward to almost 8:30 p.m. We closed at 8. Holistic Day ended at 5. We attempted to avoid escalation by avoiding it altogether, but enough was enough. On a normal day, I would whip out the vacuum cleaner at this exact time of closing, giving people the hint. We don't vacuum on Sundays, but I went to the owner and told her my plan to vacuum in that exact area anyways. She got the idea. But before I got the vacuum, she went up to her and tell her that she had 20 minutes to pack up. I came back from whatever side work I was doing and I heard the altercation. Basically, she was saying, 20 minutes? That's not enough time for me to pack up my crystals. All due respect, the event ended at 5. My staff is almost finished with their work, and I'm not going to keep them here any longer to wait for you. But 20 minutes? To pack all this? I was invited here. For an event that ended at 5, you've overstayed your welcome. Crystal Lady went on and on about the woman that organized it. So the owner asked her to call her, and Crystal Lady didn't have her number. The owner ended up calling her out on that. This exchange went on for at least 10 minutes. Wasting 10 minutes of the 20 minutes given to her to pack up her freaking crystals. Anyways, eventually she added, my experience has been unpleasant. Nobody even offered me a menu. B, no. That's when I intervened. I did offer her a menu when she asked me about the soup. I was hospitable to her as the person who was serving on the inside. She declined when I asked if she wanted to order, so I called her out. You absolutely were offered a menu when you asked me about the soup. She started going on talking about the freaking soup and said that she can't eat this specific soup because she's a chemo patient. Then what are the crystals for then? I didn't say it, but I thought it. But she's a chemo patient and she doesn't want the soup, blah, blah, blah. I continue to argue. Probably shouldn't have, but this lying bee was making me look lazy to my boss. Owner told me to walk away and said it wasn't worth it. So I did. She packed up her crystals and she was very vocal about how 20 minutes isn't enough time. So my coworker was sweeping the area around her. Said coworker is a female, probably like 6'2", she's supermodel status. There's a piece of paper on the table and Crystal Lady deliberately flicks it onto the floor where my coworker just swept. My coworker, will call her June for this instance, and Crystal Lady is P for Psycho B. June said, okay, I'll pick it up, I guess. Dramatically bends over and picks it up. Well, I didn't have time. Leaving it on the table would have sufficed. Listen, little girl, 20 minutes isn't enough time for all of my crystals. 20 minutes, it's 8:30. The event ended at 5. You had 3.5 hours, Crystal Lady. She might have called her a name too. I just find it hilarious that out of everyone I work with, the one she called little girl is taller than even all the guys. I think she's like 30, so she's youngish, I guess, but little girl is hilarious in this circumstance. Anyways, after the fight, we stopped entertaining her and she just left. We cheered, walked out the door and saw an unfamiliar car idling in the parking lot. The plan was to shine our brights on it and say, screw Crystal Lady. When I got to my car, the idling car pulled out and screamed at our management, I'm going to leave a bad review. So I've been keeping tabs on our reviews, nothing unfortunately. Apparently the lady that organized Holistic Day got bad vibes and blocked Crystal Lady, unaware that she would stay for so long. She packed her crap at 4, so she unblocked her to tell her to stay away. And luckily she's a West Sider and we're far, far east, so I'm hoping we never cross paths with this lady again. The owner didn't understand why we all hate Holistic Day until she worked one. She will now share my nightmares of Crystal Lady. Freaking freak, but let me know, am I the jerk? I don't think I've ever said this on the Jerk channel, but I don't really buy into the whole crystal energy astrology mumbo jumbo. I'm totally cool if people are into it, but when it becomes your life, it's pretty annoying in my opinion. Maybe I've just had bad experiences with the holistic type people, but I'm just not buying what they're selling. But as for Crystal Lady here, she seems like one of those types that hurt the cause more than help it, you know? She might be turning more people off the holistic thing, and you probably don't want that. Entitled Karen claims false advertising at my store, so I tell her to take it up with corporate. We've done something close to 200,000 in sales in the last 2 days. The weather turned to trash and suddenly people were clamoring for new inside furniture because their 15-year-old couch isn't as comfortable anymore. That happens when you spend all summer barbecuing and enjoying your new outdoor furniture that you just so happened to buy the previous year. Due to excessive inventory, we have a lot of small bedside tables marked down, but it's only one color. Like kind of a natural pine color, beautiful warm tones. They're $100, clearly labeled clearance. To help move more inventory, we're taking extra discounts on these items. The tags that you bring to the counter are different colors and the items themselves are also emblazoned with a huge yellow clearance tag. No way to mistake that one as clearance over the others. Lady brings up a tag to my cashier. We've hired some seasonals and the kid working the counter is super cool and super respectful. They're a great kid. She brings up the tag for a non-clearance table from one of our arrangements in the back. Its original price tag is listed at $400, but it's on sale for $200. Pretty killer deal if you ask me. She asks for the price check, insists it's a clearance tag, like aggressively insists she plucked the tag from the cherry bedside table of a clearance item, so it should be $75. He scans the tag, politely informs the customer that it isn't ringing up clearance and that it's $200. She immediately screams that that's wrong. He apologizes and says that they're the pine tables and that they're clearly marked with red tags and yellow clearance signs, and the table that she plucked this from was a cherry table. Not clearance, but still a great deal. She demanded a manager, stating that nowhere on anything did it say that it was strictly for the pine tables. I walk over to check it out. She's got the tag for the cherry table sitting there and demands that it was tagged clearance. I asked her what section she got the tag from. She answers the big section of end tables in the back of the store. So that's typically the extra section, pushed against the back of the wall. We have some smaller sets and tables back there since we have a lot of clearance ones. Unfortunately, the cherry ones aren't part of the clearance, just the pine. That's not right. You have all these tables marked as clearance. The signs aren't specific for the pine ones. This one is clearance. I want this for $100. Your signs are misleading. Nowhere does it say anywhere on the signs that it's specific to the pine. I saw this cherry one and it's clearance. I'm sorry, ma'am. I have all the clearance tables marked clearance. They have yellow signs and red tags. Again, I'd be happy to get you the clearance table, but that's pine, not cherry. Well, I'm a marketing manager and this is wrong. The signs don't indicate the pine ones. This is false advertising. I'm going to post all over your corporate website. I'm going to post it all over the internet about your unfair business practices. Okay, and you're welcome to do so. Again, I'm sorry, but this item you picked is not clearance. Clearance is clearly marked with a giant yellow sign and red tags. I'm happy to sell it to you if you'd like, but I cannot mark a $400 table on sale for $200 down to $75. It's $200. If you'd like to swap it for a pine one for $75, we can do that. It's your choice. I had to walk away at that point. I've been doing this for a long time and I know this particular customer would continue to argue with me. And seeing as I set the damn display myself, we would go nowhere. I literally left the choice in the customer's hands. I wasn't rude and I wasn't aggressive. I was pretty polite and understanding. But when you threaten me with corporate or complaints, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But essentially the negotiation ends. I don't reward aggressive and unkind behavior, especially when you come guns a-blazing at my team. I always have their backs. My leaders running the store know this and they back me up too. They know I'm never unkind and I always offer a fair solution to a customer and leave it in the customer's hands. Ultimately, the customer left the cherry table but purchased her replica Tiffany lamp and left. I happened to be fixing something up front and her receipt printed with the survey on the bottom. I encouraged her to fill out the survey with her dissatisfaction about the signage. Corporate absolutely wants to know if the way they want the signage isn't clear. They ultimately make those calls, not me. I ended up emailing my contacts, including my boss and their boss, about the situation. I let the younger cashier read it before I sent it to make sure I had everything above board and the situation wasn't misrepresented. Though a couple of cashiers pointed out that that after I walked away, and after I sent that email, that she called me a B and told my cashier to never end up like their boss. Ironically enough, my team also had my back and thought I was being fair by offering the swap for the pine ones, and they couldn't understand how someone could be so obtuse as to assume that every side table was on clearance, being that clearance is always heavily marked down and clearly, sometimes annoyingly, aggressively labeled. But let me know. Am I the jerk? I love when managers and coworkers have each other's back. I tried to be this for a lot of people at all of my jobs I had. I know there are a good amount of people out there that don't stick up for themselves because they don't want to cause trouble or they just might have anxiety. So I don't mind being the voice for the voiceless. I did the same with customers. I don't remember a specific time that I stepped in to help a coworker with a customer, but I do remember a time that a pretty rude dude was causing trouble in my cashier line. I'm not sure if he wanted a manager or if something wasn't right pricing wise, but it was one of those situations where he was holding up the line and had to step to the side. He stood right next to my cash register, huffing and puffing and demanding a manager while I was trying to work. While I was helping this nice old lady, this dude just kept being rude until I ultimately snapped at him, saying, "Sir, you are going to need to wait until a manager comes. I cannot help you with your problem, and I have other customers that need to be helped." He gave me this shocked but pissed face and I continued doing my job. The little old lady that I was helping saw the whole thing and told me that she was leaving and that she hopes that I had a really nice day. It was a kind gesture after having to deal with that bad customer. My Karen boss won't leave us alone to do our jobs. For context, I'm a female bartender / server and I've only been at this place for 3 weeks and I absolutely can't stand my boss. Is there a petty revenge solution or should I just quit? This place has went through 4 or 5 managers in the time that she's owned the restaurant, which I think is a pretty big red flag. The first week after I got hired, our current GM announced he was leaving, and he was only there for 2 months. Since then, Karen has been in the restaurant daily. She micromanages everyone, including our long-time employees who have been there upwards of a year who also hate her. She has 0 restaurant experience. She's just a business owner, yet she is constantly over our shoulders and in our way during service. It's a small place, especially behind the bar. There is really only room for 1 person, yet there she is, behind the bar most nights, watching your pores and telling you what to do even though we all know what we're doing, or not to straw test your cocktails because it's not classy. Shoving tickets in our faces even when we're already working on a ticket, running food just to shove it in your face in the middle of the floor and not actually run it. Same thing with drinks, except she leaves them on a random table somewhere and tells you to go get them, contradicting just about everything she yells at us about with her then solutions. She thinks she's helping, but all she does is piss us off and distracts us from our actual jobs. Last night we had a rush, only 2 servers on, myself and another girl who I think is a junkie. This girl must have been having withdrawals because she couldn't keep up with anything. She's honestly so nice and I've had experience with addicts, so I get it. I ended up basically having to take over all of her tables the entire night. Then around 10 p.m. our bartender walks by and says, "Bye guys, I'm leaving." So then I have to jump on the bar and take over and juggle tables as well. It's an absolute disaster scene of a mess. I'm making tickets through the mess and the other bartender left, all while Karen is behind the bar with me. Consistently every time I turn around to grab something, she's in my way and I have to wait for her to move her large pizza self to grab what I need. She kept slamming tickets in front of me despite me already working on a ticket for one of my tables. And she was also trying to make drinks herself, so she was constantly asking me what went in them. During this time, I had one of my tables come up right after I finished their drinks and announced that they were leaving and want their check despite having drinks waiting. And Karen then decided to school me on, "This is because you're not getting drinks fast enough. You need to work on your time management and organization. Tonight was horrible and you guys handled it really poorly. Tomorrow I'm wearing my work clothes and I'm serving." I just wanted to tell her, well, maybe if you would get the hell out of the way, I could do my job. But I didn't. And now today I'm dreading my night because she's apparently going to serve. The solution is just laughable and I'm going to find a new job. It's unbelievable how frustrated I am just after 3 short weeks with her. When I started, she also tried telling me to take out my septum ring just because she thinks it's unattractive. I told her that I'd have to bend it with pliers every day to do that for her, even though I don't. Mind you, I have a tattoo sleeve and large gauges. Like, what the hell does it even matter? Anyways, am I the jerk? You know, hearing all these terrible serving stories recently makes me think that service or food managers might be the worst to work with. Because the job already seems super hectic, and of course you have to deal with entitled customers, I would have quit so quickly. Only way I stay at a place this bad would be because of the pay, and even then, it wouldn't last that long. My job says we can be fired if we don't label everything in the kitchen, so I make sure they notice my labels. This malicious compliance is both lighthearted and somewhat silly. It took place several years back when I worked in a corporation-owned restaurant. While it was not my malicious compliance, I was the trigger for it and the only one there to see the results. First, a little bit of necessary background in case you have not worked in the food service or for a large corporation. For restaurants, food quality and safety handling of products, tools, chemicals, cleanliness, and labels are very important. If you don't want people to get sick or injured, especially in an environment that has always somewhat too small, very hot, very loud, slippery, and full of medieval era siege repellent, such as hot oil, fire, boiling water, and 9-inch blades, labels are especially important because the person using the item isn't always the same one who portioned it out for service. And if not properly labeled, you would have no way to ensure if it was fresh enough to serve safely. Corporate kitchens take this even further and employ third-party auditors for health and safety to ensure everyone is following the standards across their chains. This is not a bad thing, although sometimes their standards clash badly with reality. For example, shelled hard-boiled eggs in a brine once opened have a best before date that lasts for over a year. The auditors, however, decided that once a pail was opened, they were only good for a single week. There was also no leeway on labeling. Even if the product's packaging contained all of the information, it still required a label. This wasn't unreasonable because a standardized label is easier to read, but for very high usage items where you go through several packages a day, it could become difficult to ensure this happening, especially during rushes. One of those items was bacon bits, which brings us to our malicious compliance. We had been audited and failed because 3 items were found in one of our fridges that were not properly labeled because, and I quote, "the labels must clearly state the name of the product such that anyone can identify it. It must have the day it was opened/made and the day it expires. The labeler must also print their name." 2 of the labels did not have the person that labeled them's name, and 1 of them did not have the name of the product. The product without a name? Bacon bits. I was put in charge for making sure that we passed our next audit, and I took it seriously. Talking to the others, finding out where pinpoints in following procedures occurred, and ensuring absolutely everyone got a refresher on the standards. It mostly went well and everyone was getting into the groove, but there was another container of bacon bits missing its name. There were only 2 of us working at the time, so after the lunch rush, I pulled the Bacon Bandit aside to have a heart-to-heart. "Hey, Bacon Bandit, I know you were busy, but you gotta put your name on the bacon bits." "Really? They get used up before the end of the day. There is no way to confuse them with another product. They last for a month, and we just don't have time during 15 minutes or free lunch if we want to get the food out on time." I understand the reasoning why it happened. You're not getting in trouble for this, but the audits can shut us down, and even though it feels unnecessary, labels are for protection for both customers and the company. Everybody has to be on board with this to make it work, and if we can't even label bacon bits, the area manager is going to question why we have the highest paid kitchen staff at our location. Can I count on you to make sure that bacon bits are labeled? Yeah, I'll do it, but it's still dumb and wastes a lot of time. Thank you, I appreciate it. A few days later, it's a particularly soggy day, and lo and behold, the auditor shows up for their surprise inspection right in the middle of lunch rush. I'm by myself on the line, so I am only half able to keep tabs on them while putting out orders. They seem happy with things so far, and just as the lunch rush is ending, they enter the main fridge where dwells the bacon bits. The auditor is in there for a long time, way more time than normal, and when they come out of the fridge, they are grinning ear to ear. Well, that's weird, I think. Then they get our general manager and take them into the fridge, and now I'm thinking, oh, that can't be a good sign. When they come out, they are both laughing and I am completely confused. They go into the office to discuss the results of the audit, and I go into the fridge to see if I can figure out what was going on. I go in, everything is labeled, everything is FIFO'd, first in, first out, and everything is stacked in food safe order. Then I see it. The bacon bit sitting proudly on its shelf in a container clearly labeled for the world to see. Mother freaking little piggy pieces. Yesterday's date, expiration date, by Bacon Bandit. We passed the audit 100% because Little Pig Pieces, and I quote, clearly stated the name of the product in such a way that anyone can identify it. But let me know, was my coworker the jerk? Dude, this was hilarious because I have done the same thing before. Although I didn't need to label stuff because it was food related, we did have to label papers at my old job that already had the proper information on them. But our supervisor wanted the time, date, and test phase all over the paper in pen, which again, all this information was already on the printout. So I took my pen and wrote all over the big empty spaces on the paper all the information they wanted, just to make sure they didn't miss. Like the OP said, it's a silly malicious compliance, but sometimes you gotta do something silly to make it through the day. My entitled boss demands I follow the dress code. When I do, she instantly regrets it. I work for a secondary education institute. Anyone who has worked in academia will confirm that it's a different brand of crazy. Adding on to that, our staff has no balance in gender or ethnicity, so it's the opposite of toxic masculinity. Toxic femininity? Doesn't quite roll off the tongue. Anyways, with weak management, it has essentially become a mean girls club. The boss lady PA is basically queen bee, with the rest of us being low worker bees. As I am not someone who kisses butt, I am often not very well liked, hence the low worker bee status. Work buys staff shirts for everyone with our logo on it, about 3 or 4 times a year. There are usually nice golf shirts or button-up shirts, but the last time, oof, this was an actual shirt Queen Bee wore one day. Boss lady literally squealed in delight like a toddler when she saw it, insisting that all of us get one. Guys, let me describe this monstrosity. It was mainly navy blue with a type of print. Think paisley, but not quite. The shirt was filled with cartoonish squigglies and doodles that made absolutely no sense. Apples, fleur-de-lis, seashells, even tiny little fish skeletons. They danced and merged in every direction. In violent shades of teal, beige, salmon pink, turquoise green, and neon purple. So versatile, you can wear it with so many different colors. And if the design wasn't bad enough, the fit was even worse. A size that normally hugs my figure fits me like a circus tent. I billowed out from right under my boobs, and it was so long the bottom seam came to just above my thighs. The most unflattering cut I've ever worn. It was like a blind person tried to make maternity wear and changed their mind halfway through. It was also sleeveless. The only one of us who voiced her reservations was forced to give it back. She was so visibly happy that she wouldn't have to wear it, and this pissed off management. The shirt was made mandatory on Mondays. Being a person that never gets hot, I wore a jacket over it every time, showing as little of it as I could. One day, to solidify our loyalty, it was decided to take a group photo that purposely included this hideous shirt. Being short, I was placed in front. Boss lady looked over us and promptly declared, "OP, you'll have to remove your jacket, thank you." I replied that I would rather not. She insisted and we would go back and forth. But they were all about to be deceived. I'm quite reserved, so no one at work really knows me. I never wear anything sleeveless because I have tattoos all over my shoulders and halfway down my upper arm. I always look normal and professional, wearing tailored jackets, cardigans, or 3/4 sleeves. Cue malicious compliance. So you want me to take off my jacket? I insist. No exceptions? None. I remove my jacket and toss it out of the frame in one of the coolest gestures I've ever been able to perform. I turn forward with my left shoulder facing the camera and reveal a Grim Reaper with a sweeping scythe and blue wings. That actually matched this ghastly shirt quite well, now that I think about it. There is a noticeable intake of breaths, and the whole group falls silent, waiting in anticipation to see who would triumph. It was like a shootout between 2 gunmen in a western. I look at her blankly, internally screaming, "The freak you gonna do now, B?" And I'm pretty sure she heard me. Boss lady realizes she can't go back on what she said without looking like even more of a butthead than she already does, and she turns to face the camera. Y'all, that was one of my favorite pictures of all time. Pissed off boss lady in the front with a smile that just doesn't reach her eyes. Tatted up admin immediately to her left with the biggest grin in the whole picture. Everyone else's faces were a mixture of amusement and confusion. Queen Bee slightly frowning as she is still trying to figure out what the heck just happened. Marketing showed it to me before deleting it, and we had a few laughs. Needless to say, that photo did not make it into the newsletter, as was originally intended. Crazy enough, there is a follow-up to this story a year later. So this post follows a previous post from a year back, regarding a hideous shirt that we had to wear to work. Socially and politically, our work environment is a mean girls club. I work at a secondary institution on support team. For stupid reasons, a hideous shirt that one of our support staff was wearing one day became our mandatory Monday shirt. Cue to this week, it's photo week again. We are taking group photos of all the staff, learners, and various teams and committees. They are all going in the annual magazine, which is quite a big deal. All staff were informed that they could wear whatever they wished, as long as it lined up with the colorful palette of the magazine. This was shared with everyone. They actually chose really pretty shades of pink, peach, mauve, and sky blue. The support team was really happy we could skip the ghastly shirt, until we couldn't. Last week on Thursday, it was communicated to us that we would have to wear the monstrosity. Of the whole institution, our group would be the only one that looked like doo-doo. The next day, on Friday, I was at the hairdresser and inspiration struck. I already have a short pixie cut that I color ultraviolet, basically very dark brown with the purple sheen. I revealed my plans to my hairstylist and she loved it. After my haircut, I went shopping. Now, one of the things touted as an advantage of the ugly shirt was the array of colors it contained and how versatile it is, as you can wear it with so many colors. I just don't think you were meant to wear all the colors together at once. I ruined the photo when the sleeveless shirt unexpectedly revealed the tattoos on my left arm and shoulder. So I knew this year that they would strategically place me with my right side facing forward. I know how they compose and space these photos by now. I've been here too long. So imagine their surprise when I pitch up with an asymmetric pixie cut, long sweeping bangs to the left with regular sideburns to the left, and the right side shaved in a buzz cut, all colored bright purple. Seriously, when I was facing that way, I looked different. So they tried to subtly hide me in the middle, at the back, slightly behind the person to the left, to hide these pesky tattoos. Because I was facing forward, I looked sufficiently professional. But I'm wearing killer platform heels, something I haven't done in 10 years, which makes me almost a hand taller than almost everyone. I politely declined their request to take the shoes off. So I have to sit in the front. Now you can clearly see my formal dress pants in bottle green, as well as my undershirt in vibrant teal, my killer heels in pale sparkly gold, and my wide salmon pink belt. Now, I didn't waste any money on these items. Wearing any of them alone or in a different combination look fine. So I will be using all of them. No matter what they tried, they could not find a way to make the group look coherently polished and professional. Because one way they had a tatted up admin. If they photoshopped those out, I would complain politely but firmly. Other way, they had an angry emo boy. One way, the height was off. In the other way, they had someone in an ensemble so garnish it offended the senses. That afternoon, a while after work, we were informed that the group photo would be redone for the support team. We were kindly requested to wear the colors as indicated in the color palette tomorrow. In the group WhatsApp, I commented duly noted and received a ton of PMs joking about it. On the bright side, I have received a ton of compliments on the hairstyle. In a sane environment, I would have never tried this. I've colored it back to dark ultraviolet. Box color takes 20 minutes, which complements my light pink dress nicely, along with my round salmon belt. But let me know, am I the jerk? This OP was awesome. I love this type of malicious compliance. It doesn't really hurt anyone and it's just mildly annoying, but to be fair, it's just a response to something else that is annoying. I have a pretty similar malicious compliance that I did while I was in high school. You see, I used to have dreadlocks back in the day. I absolutely love them. Nothing beats you waking up every day and your hair is already done. Anyways, one weekend I decided I wanted to bleach a few of my dreads and one of my friends did it for me. When I went back to school, a lot of people seemed to like it, but one person certainly did not. And that was our lousy principal. He saw me in the hallway and dragged me into his office to complain. He told me that I was going to have to dye my hair again because it doesn't look natural. This really annoyed me, and as I've mentioned a million times on the Jerk channel, I have no problem speaking my mind. So when I heard that hair must look natural, I asked my principal if he would be forcing his daughter to dye her hair as well, because she was a classmate of mine and I knew that she had just gotten highlights in her hair. I told him, "Those aren't natural, sir." He obviously didn't like that, but because it was his daughter, he said, "Well, that's different," and quickly told me that if I didn't dye my hair back to a natural color, I would be suspended. Now, I'll be honest, if I had the mindset I have today back then, I would have fought this until I could keep my hair, or his daughter and everyone else in the school had to dye their hair too. But I didn't want to cause any trouble for my parents, so I complied with his demands. Kind of. You see, I have dark brownish black hair, and I only had about 5 or 7 dreads that were bleached blonde. So I decided to dye those blonde dreads a dark purple. That way in the hallways of school, it would blend in very nicely, but when you went outside for lunch or gym, you could clearly see that my dreads were purple in the sunny daylight. The principal never gave me any flack after that, and people seemed to like the purple dreads. My dad is super strict about his rules that I need to follow, so I follow them perfectly in the wrong direction. This is a silly malicious compliance, but I think everyone probably did something similar if they had very strict parents. Everyone appreciates saving money at the pump. Gas isn't cheap, but it wasn't quite so bad 20 odd years ago. But still, why pay more than you have to pay? Some folks will wait hours at Costco or other favorite stations that they use to pass by even if it isn't close to their home or work. In fact, some truck stops are known for having great prices and conveniently just off the side of the freeway. As a college student and licensed driver, the wise old man needed a ride to the airport one day. Now, my dad was pretty particular. He was a fan of rules. Nothing was simple enough that it couldn't be improved by a specific formula of rules or instructions. For example, a reasonably easy 30-minute drive to the airport could definitely benefit from specific instructions, plus a side mission involving his very own specific additional instructions, because the best deal in gas is just off the freeway at the truck stop along the route. There were also a couple of other younger kids over, kids of friends of my mom who was having a get-together. They thought it would be fun to hang out with an older kid who got to drive. They didn't plan on having a road trip, but as you will see, a road trip they got. To set a clear example, maybe even a standard or a bar, that would show me just how easy this airport run would be, the wise old man would drive to the airport detailing the truck stop where I would be responsible for maximizing my value and getting the best deal when I fill up on the way back, with no additional stops or deviations to be allowed on this very clear, very simple mission. So we loaded up from the southwest of town and hopped onto the freeway, and upon nearing this big city, we hopped on the beltway that rings this city in the center of a US state in which this happened. The wise old man made sure to note as we approached the blessed and preferred truck stop, the exit number, the road name, and the truck stop name. This was easily remembered because it was all very close to home. In fact, it was on the drive I made regularly on my runs to and from State University in the north of the state in my own car. But this wasn't my car, it wasn't my gas money, or my choice. I would get off at the exit and take the highway back home. Now, mind you, we don't take the highway to the airport because it's slower. Much slower. There are stoplights, but I was not to get back on the freeway or interstate. I was to proceed straight home only using that road, no other stops, no other routes. The rules and instructions were reviewed as we approached the airport. We got there with enough time before the flight to do a quick pop quiz to make sure I knew all the apparent details and rules. You got it, the kids are in good hands, have a great flight. But he was quizzing me. He wasn't asking my suggestions, he wasn't even asking if I had any doubts, concerns, or questions. It really was just as simple as following the rules. Now, if it was him or anyone else, the correct answer would be save time and fuel by taking the same exact route home. Or hear me out, to get back on the freeway for 2 more miles to take the next highway, which would also be a ton of stoplights over 20 miles, but would in fact get us home. So back to the blessed and preferred truck stop, we headed to maximize our value and get the best deal. Cash was exchanged, premium unleaded fuel was pumped. Now, rather than saving time or money with the sufficient return trip, I did exactly as the wise man directed. We would take the next 20 miles going stoplight to stoplight down the highway. Just not the right highway. I passed a quiz and knew the rules, and the rules I would follow. Unfortunately, the very clear rules did not allow for getting back to town where we lived. However, because we were now 20 miles south, actually southwest, I would have to turn off the highway and make another 15-mile drive east through the very twisty farm country. The rules expressly forbid this. So I passed on hoping for the best. That's actually a lie unless you slightly add hoping for the best road trip, because we were absolutely not heading home. The kids in the back were having a blast, going on the trip with a college kid driving. Everyone's laughing, it was genuinely a good time. Though as we nipped into the western edge of the correct county, we all knew we were not going to make it without breaking the rules and deviating from the very clear directions. Anyone in the car would have passed the quiz at the end. As elementary age kids of maybe 10, they were very excited to get a vote. Do we follow the rules or do we turn? Nobody thought it was worth breaking the rules, so onward we continued. And so, we stopped heading towards home altogether. Having taken the highway more than once on the way to visit friends at the state university in the south of this US state hosting this road trip, I knew we could definitely make it there, but I would have to go out of pocket for gas to get us home. As with all good things, this road trip had to come to an end. So at a certain point, roughly calculated by our falling fuel gauge, we turned around. We laughed and continued having a great time. We laughed even harder when we got back to that one crucial step the wise man, my dad, left out, turning for the long and somewhat perfulous farmland connector to get us back towards where we lived, where the kids were willingly co-conspirators in this performative act of malicious compliance. Were they my audience or were they my downfall? As we get out, the kids were laughing, the moms were happy the kids had fun, but we were asked, what took so long? Oh, sorry, Dad had specific instructions on how to get home, and we tried following them, but we ended up going out of our way. My audience just laughed and said they had fun. Since the car was on E, my mom topped it off long before my dad returned, so the wise old man had no idea his rules and very clear instructions ended up paying for us to have a real nice road trip despite his best efforts. My mom has been dead for years now, and I never told my dad, but the wise old man is no longer as weird about the rules. But let me know, am I the jerk? Geez, this story kinda took a turn when the OP mentioned his mom was dead. I will say malicious compliances can be a bit of fun when it comes to strict parents. I can't say I have a memory of me doing this to my parents, but I do have a road trip memory that almost got me in deep doo-doo with my family. So I used to skate back in high school, and one day me and my friends wanted to go to the local skate shop. This was a big city, but by local I mean a skate shop brand that was created in the city. The only issue was this skate shop wasn't close to us, and no one in our group had a license to drive. But that didn't mean that we didn't have a person with parents who didn't care about their kids' safety. Enter Joe. Joe's parents gave us a car to drive to head to the skate shop. Nothing like letting a bunch of high school kids pile into a car that was made to seat 4 people. Well before the 6 of us pulled out of the driveway, I tell my friend Joe, yo, I don't have a good feeling about this, so don't do anything stupid. And of course Joe just said, don't worry, I got this. Surprisingly, we got to the skate shop just fine, and we got my friend a new board and we were all excited to get back to skating. As we piled back into the car, super hyped about the next skate session, my friend Joe decided to speed down the highway going what must have been at least 90 miles an hour, and what would you know? That bad feeling I had showed up in the sign of flashing red and blue lights. As my friend Joe pulls over, he gets a very aggressive cop barking orders. This cop yells for us to get out of the car, and my friend Joe does, but being scared high school kids, we didn't know if that applied to us too. So we start popping out and immediately get yelled at by this cop to get back in the car. Long story short, his backup shows up and they arrest my friend Joe and tell us that they were impounding the car, so we need to leave. Mind you, we were on the highway, and the police just told us to find a ride home. I don't know if that was proper protocol, but this legit happened. The cops just left 5 kids on the highway. Well, at one point, I kinda panicked because I kinda told my parents that I was just hanging out at my friend's house, and I never mentioned that we might be getting into a car to drive across the city. We did manage to have a friend pick us up to save our skins, but they showed up in a 2-door with a very small back seat. So just imagine trying to fit 7 people into a small 2-door car. Let's just say that me and my friends all got a little bit closer on that ride home. Oh, and for anyone thinking that my friend Joe was a total jerk for ignoring my weird feeling before the trip, you don't need to worry about him because while the rest of us were scrambling to get home, Joe was apparently gaining street cred inside a jail cell. According to our friend Joe, his time in the slammer was something out of a TV movie. Although Joe was a minor, he said that he got thrown into a prison cell with a whole bunch of bad dudes that wanted to cause him harm. One of these dudes even got in Joe's face. So he said that he could only do one thing, and that was to fight this guy to let everyone know in that prison cell that Joe wasn't a guy to be taken lightly. After Joe destroyed this guy and put him in what I would assume is a prison hospital, he said he started to get recruited by some gangs that were inside this crazy prison cell for people who speed down a highway. We all heard this story the next day when Joe was already chilling at home with his family. As you might imagine, we as a group of high school kids called total BS on this whole thing because we actually found out that the police called Joe's parents to pick him up and let him know why he got in trouble. So every day after that, we would make fun of Joe for trying to sell us this crazy prison story drama. Not sure why he made it up. I could only assume that he did it to make himself look cool, or at the very least, try to make himself look like he had a worse night than us that was left stranded. I still laugh about that night every once in a while, but because of that story, it also reminds me that I could have easily died that night too, with the way Joe was driving. Sometimes your crazy stories really make you think. My Karen boss treats us like children and costs the company millions of dollars. Many years ago, I worked for a company that hired an increasingly obtuse financial department who took over when they first reorganized. It used to be a loose collection of managers, but the year after I started, they went to a more organized and separate structure. To be fair, this is more about my boss than myself. We had a travel team, a group of volunteers from sales and IT who would go, en masse, with equipment and techs to do setups, displays, and network at trade shows. We had a booth, some sales guys would be there, and networking would commence. There was always a set of volunteers from IT department because some of the shows would be in big cities, and we'd get to attend vendors events, parties, and hang out with the sales guys who were mostly gay alcoholics for some reason and super fun. There was this kind of seniority of who got to go volunteer, but nobody really complained, and everyone rotated who got to go. You got to go to DEF CON last year, it's my turn now. Okay, fair. The travel team lead was also a volunteer position, but commonly someone higher up, like a manager. Their job was to orchestrate equipment, rentals, expenses, travel plans, convention center fees, and shipping. They also ended up getting a lot of the free stuff too, from sales and our partners, which they'd pass along to the travel team. It was all kind of a perk, to be fair, for everyone involved. But when the new director of finance started, she put in some new and strict policies. Some of their policies started with, travel team is no longer allowed to get reimbursed without explicit approval, and nobody was approved post-event. Travel team does not get a credit card of their own or even a company card. Travel team gets gift cards for a set amount, like $150, which was to be used for all expenses. Sadly, places we needed these for, like airlines, rental agencies, hotel rooms, gas pumps, and toll booths, did not accept gift cards. Financial denied that these were gift cards and even specifically disallowed people in meetings to refer to them as such. They were pre-approved credit balances. I think that's what we had to say. But to the rest of the world, they were 100% gift cards. Another policy was no matter how early you asked for it, often finance waited until the very last minute, and usually after half a dozen reminders, to get anything approved, which incurred a lot of unnecessary costs, like expedited shipping, same-day rental penalties, and inflated airfares. Lastly, if they forgot, it was your fault or your manager's fault for not reminding them enough. Okay, we reminded you 4 times to buy the team airline tickets and it wasn't done. We should have reminded you 5 times, so our fault. This was all in response to the director of finance's claims that it would reduce fraud, an issue that, as far as anyone could tell, never happened. The director had this Dolores Umbridge approach that everybody somewhere might get away with something. She was a patronizing grit with a smug grin and this annoying head waggle when she downsplained something to you. So we'll call her Dolores. Before her, the travel team would just submit receipts and get reimbursed. Dolores put an end to that, specifically saying that the previous lead of the travel team was going to spend all the money on steak and wine. He understandably told her to go screw herself and quit the company when the dust settled. In his wake, Dolores used his free stuff from vendors as a shining example of stolen opulence and swag hoarding that she put an end to. Oh, behold the Almighty on his throne of airborne express stress squishies and free Uline catalogs. That left my manager to take over his duties, and he's never done the travel team before, so he wasn't really sure how it all worked and didn't push back on Dolores at first until he was forced to travel with the team. He was surprised that he didn't have an expense account or corporate card, and when he asked for one, he got the gift card. When he tried to use it, it was just rejected pretty much everywhere he needed it except various restaurants. He paid for everything else on his personal American Express card, including some stuff for the rest of the team, and was rejected for reimbursement because he didn't ask beforehand. He was on the hook for $40,000 in various things for the 2-week-long trip. Of course, he complained to top management. Dolores threatened to quit if she wasn't allowed to do her job, and top management had never had to deal with her before and were kind of wishy-washy about being the bad guy. Like, well, she says she let you use the gift card, so... And when my management said that they were rejected, Dolores said, he's just not trying hard enough. He's afraid of confrontation. He needs to be a big boy and fight back. But in the end, the top management reimbursed him under the pressure from the legal team. After that happened, Dolores settled on having certain things prepaid for, like hotel, travel, truck rentals, and shipping. But they waited so long to do them that they often tried to get hotel rooms or truck rentals the day of a popular event, sold out, or got the wrong hotel. Washington, D.C. is not the same as Washington State. Or waited so long for shipping, it cost $250 to send something overnight that would have cost $40 to send it weeks prior. They also didn't understand how much anything actually cost, and how we saved money by doing things ourselves. In some cases, finance did everything wrong, so the team would arrive at the right hotel, but found out that finance didn't submit an authorized approval, and found out that finance didn't submit an authorized approval for a card. For example, incidentals, a requirement for most hotels for trade shows. And nobody could reach them, so again, people got dinged on their personal cards. Again, Dolores said, they just can't accept what the hotel desk, convention center union, or dumb minimum wage bunnies at the toll booth tell them. They need to fight back. We can't spoon feed and coddle these guys because they're too scared of conflict. Have you ever fought with a Jersey Turnpike toll booth collector? Yeah, neither had she. After 2 of these disasters, my manager said, just stop volunteering for these events. I will not approve time off for it. He declined being the travel lead for future trips because he just couldn't afford it. This was an unpopular move at best, but he told us, just wait, let her do her thing her way. He was a master of malicious compliance, and with no resistance, Dolores went into 5th gear with a smug grin. Now we're going to act like a real company. That leads to the next issue. Some of these travels were in major cities like Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C., etc. Dolores, again, said that people were just going to these events to get the company to pay for drinking vacations. Management was like, yeah, we wouldn't give volunteers otherwise. Well, Dolores didn't like that idea, so she decided that she would hold a staff lottery and you could enter your name and she'd have a drawing on who got to go. To be fair to everyone. This fairness seemed awfully slanted on her own staff, by the way, which we'll get to shortly. The point of these trade shows was not to take a vacation, something Dolores made absolutely sure to point out, but she didn't grasp the entire reason we went, to increase our business. It had to be IT folk for setup and sales folk for the schmoozin'. But that concept never got past her ears into her cognitive understanding. Well, since those IT and tech folk who already couldn't go didn't want to pay for it, we didn't volunteer. So the travel team ended up being other company staff who had no idea how to work, act, or deal with trade shows, which was a horrific, expensive disaster. Imagine the administrative assistant for marketing on the 5th floor winning a ticket, only to find out she had to pay for everything. Plus, Dolores always sent one of her own to keep an eye on everyone, but none of them knew how trade shows worked either. They only knew how to cater to Dolores and her controlling issues. What is a union fee? What is corkage? No, we did not approve some union to give us power. You plug your booth stuff into an outlet or something. They won't let you? Who is they? Well, then stop using the TV screens in the booth. You don't need them. We don't even sell TVs anyway. Did you know that if you have a conflict with an event center union and decline their help, that they just charge you anyways at the max rate? Yeah, Dolores and her team didn't know that either. And let me tell you, Paying those guys a few $1,000s ahead of time is a lot cheaper than just letting them charge you fines afterwards. Oh, she tried to fight back because she was not afraid of conflict, but lost heavily. Ironically, despite Dolores stating otherwise at great lengths, the non-IT or salespeople who went actually thought it was company-paid vacation-ish, just like Dolores warned about, making it a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. The fact that they had to work was surprising at first. Then after the word got out, nobody would enter the lottery. So now they had no volunteers. So Dolores assigned them to interns. Interns! I could write an entire novel from that disaster alone. Imagine sending a bunch of college kids to Vegas, telling them they had to pay for things, and putting them in a job-conflicted situation where they were guaranteed to lose. I'm sure many laws were broken. Dolores then had to send along chaperones to manage it, who were more of her finance department flunkies, and our company ended up with massive fines for various issues, including paying bail for the interns. Because the interns got into so much trouble, Dolores started hiring room monitors for the hotels, and fully legal adults had to go to the show, work the entire day at the show on their feet, and then check back into their hotel rooms. She also put 4 to 6 people to a room too, like they were in a high school band or something. She even had breathalyzers brought to make sure that nobody was drinking. Adults. She treated adults like this. This was brought up by the sales team as a PR nightmare, and my boss said, just wait, okay, let her hang herself. The first year of this, the travel team's expenses increased by over 4,000%. You heard me right, 4,000%. Trips that used to cost $3,600 were now costing $144,000 or more, often because of last-minute fees and penalties. The travel team's expenses went from $100,000 annually on average to over 2-point-something million. Because stuff was so badly mishandled, we lost a lot of our booth slots and booth renewals. So we lost half of our trade shows and looked like idiots to our clients. But the main reason we went to these trade shows in the first place was for networking, so there was literally no reason to go anymore. This was pointed out to Dolores multiple times by the sales team, so she doubled down and canceled the travel team after 1 year. Finally, top management got involved, who actually fought with Dolores for a year until she retired for personal reasons to dedicate herself to her family. It then took nearly 2 years to rebuild the travel team from scratch. People got corporate cards, travel team leads became an actual job, and when we hired one, she handled all the financial stuff for us, so it was much better and saved the company a ton of money in her first year. And there was so much rejoicing after this happened. The OP of this story did answer a few questions regarding this post. Why was she not fired when she went from spending $110K to $2.1 million? Several reasons, the biggest being that she was director of finance, so I am sure when she gave her fiscal report, she downplayed the mistakes. We also had some really good years in the early 2000s, so if we made $2 million in profit the previous year and $3 million the next, that loss would have gone unnoticed until someone realized that we could have made $6 million instead. That's my theory at any rate, based on the aftermath. Dolores was friends with 2 of the top managers and supposedly had a come to Jesus meeting with them about the state of the company's financial standing, so that's why they hired her in the first place. By the second year, several directors had quit, including friends of the top management who took them for drinks later on and got the entire scoop. Dolores has got to go. The trade show thing was only one of the cases where she messed things up. She also completely hosed one of our major supply chains by lowballing them and making a few enemies that nearly destroyed the company and gave away some of our more lucrative contracts with vendors to competitors because that broke their anti-competitive clauses. There were more issues, but that comes close to identifying some people, which is a big no-no here. What happened to the Christmas party? The Christmas party wasn't nearly as interesting, she just didn't have one. This was nearly the tail end of the whole "we're going to run like a real company now" fiasco, but once the budget for events was $2.1 million from $110,000, the Christmas party was probably far down on her list of worries. I don't think she even knew she was supposed to have one. Some people think she was funneling that money to cover up the massive expense increase for the trade show fiasco. But I can't imagine that those budgets were from the same pool. I think around November people started asking, don't they have a holiday party every year? But nobody knew who was doing it. Usually it was 3 people who were a part of it in the previous years, but they were no longer with the company. They had quit mostly because of Dolores. But even they didn't run it, per se. They hired and catered it out to some fancy hotel locally. Our fiscal year was Jan to December, so December was huge for tying things up. And this was the first year running fiscal year end stuff. She came on board late in the previous year, and so the finance would have been normally very occupied. How was she let go? She had just gained too many enemies in the company. It took a while, but after she had been with us for a year and a half, she had accumulated too much negative drag on her inertia to get things done because there started to be a very positive, strong passive resistance. This caused her to spiral out of control and try to start a coup which gained no traction and singled her out as being mildly unhinged to say the least. By the time her second anniversary came and went, she started taking sabbaticals until one of them became permanent. Her assistant took over, but then was let go. And they brought in some consulting group who started the new financial team. They were the ones that suggested that someone have the table team lead as an actual separate paid job. The woman that got hired and ran that was amazing. Is it true that she tried to sell keychains and pens? No one asked this, but a former coworker reminded me that she was appalled that we were just giving away some of our normal booth freebies like stickers, pens, shirts, and keychain flashlights. She demanded we charge at least a nominal fee for them. But IIRC, nobody followed that mandate. I only personally knew that she sent out a memo admonishing employees that a lot of the keychains went missing and she was seeing them in people's desks. Those cost the company money and wanted to charge those employees $3 for them. But apparently she wanted to charge people at the booth as well. But let me know, who was the jerk in this situation? Bro, I would have not worked with this woman the OP described here. It is crazy the lengths that she went to make sure people weren't drinking or doing bad things on this vacation. Reminded me of the time that I went on a high school class trip that lasted 2 days, and we had teachers watching our hotel rooms to make sure that the boys weren't sneaking over to see the girls. It's crazy that companies can make so much money but not notice that they were losing so much over time as well. I freak out when my account is missing $20. Also, I hate this whole concept of you need to be confrontational to get stuff done. That's just not true. In most cases, you just need to explain things in a way that people can understand. This has worked for me many times in the past, and it's a better alternative than raising your voice. I caught a car dealer with their pants down and they just pretended like I didn't exist until I left. It was around 2009 when there was a scrap scheme in Scotland. You could get £2,000 if you scrap your old banger towards a new car. I decided to go for it. But being a student, I could only afford a small car, so I was browsing the market. At the time, the new Twingo arrived, so I went to the Renault dealership near me to take a look, and to check if I could fit into it. I'm a big guy. The dealership happened to be an Arnold Clark, known for their very pushy sales techniques. So here I am, trying to look at a Twingo. But there was a small crowd of people around it. While first generation Twingo was popular in Europe, it was not available in RHD, so the second generation was a brand new Brinton. I decided to look around and look what else they had to offer. I was looking at a Renault Silo when a salesperson approached me and asked if I'd like the car. I gave a polite non-committal answer as it was the cheapest version possible. No radio, wind-up mirrors, black bumpers, white paint, you know it. He said to me that this car is worth £13,000, but today only I could have it for $4,000 less. Moreover, they will offer me special insurance, so if my car is written off or stolen in the first year, I will get its full value for the moment of purchase back in cash. He offered to discuss this with me over a coffee, so since the crowd for the Twingo was still big, I said, why not? He sat me down at the table, made me a really nice latte, and went to bring me some leaflets. Meanwhile, one of his colleagues approached me to tell me in secret that he shouldn't be telling me this as they're on commission, but this is too great a deal to miss. Yes, they're that predictable. Finally, the first guy came, and it turned out that he not only brought leaflets, but also brought the contract and other documents ready to sign. I took a sip of my coffee and told him that I need to give a good read to these documents. I started from the insurance documents. It said indeed that if I crash the car or if it gets stolen within the year of purchase, I will get its full value at the moment of purchase in cash. Its full value, that is £9,000. So I stopped reading and asked the guy, you said you can sell me this car for $4,000 less than what it's worth today, right? He said, yes. I said, great, this insurance document values the car at $9,000. If I can have it for $5,000, I'm paying cash right now, and I'd be happy to drive it off in the next 15 minutes. Where do I sign? I start browsing the paperwork for that other document, but he snapped them out of my hands and told me that he needed to check something, then disappeared into the staff-only doors. I just sat there. The other guy came and asked if he could be any help. I told him the other guy went somewhere with my contract and I wanted to sign it, but he never came back. He told me that he'd go look for me and that I am to wait and make sure that I am comfortable. They will be back right away. He disappeared as well. I finished my coffee, tried the Twingo, it was not comfortable, tried the new Revolt Master because I like vans, and left. The rest of the staff was giving me the wide berth, so it was fun. But I finally got bored. I ended up with the Daihatsu purchase from an independent dealer, which I love and I drive it all those years till today. Actually, there was a little side story with the Daihatsu as well. Arnold Clark didn't have Daihatsu dealerships, so there was only one independent dealership in Glasgow. I went to the first one, and while I was taking a look, I overheard sales guys talking to each other about bloody Polish people wasting their time, while Poles don't have the money for brand new cars anyways. This was the time when Polish immigration to the UK was still relatively a new thing. On hearing that, I just got up and left and didn't look back. Got my car from another dealership on the opposite end of the city. When I picked it up, I drove by that first dealership and drove slowly while blasting Polish music from my stereo. But let me know, am I the jerk? I spoke about my bad car dealership experience in another video, but man, why does buying a car have to be so scummy? Like, I understand things run on commission, but having to play games when it comes to making a purchase is kind of shady. And in the instance of this OP, it seems like he caught the dealership with their pants down and they were able to just pull out of the deal. Seems pretty messed up, but sadly, that is the world. That's it for today's video. If you want to make sure you don't miss out on any content, hit that subscribe button and make sure you hit that bell to turn on notifications. If you want to finish listening to all those stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And if you're someone who live streams and needs copyright-free music, check out the Cream of the Crop music by searching Cream of the Stream on Spotify or whatever music platform you choose. Remember, it's free. Entitled manager doesn't believe my doctor's note, so I get her fired after getting hurt. Tiny bit of pertinent information. In 2014, I had a C-section to bring my son into this world. I was let go from my previous job because they didn't want the liability if something happened to a pregnant woman on the job. I was rehired by a fast food company where I held my very first job, which is not McDonald's. It's a bit higher priced than that, where you could find fried chicken, a hot dog, and double cheeseburger at the same time. There will be no mention of my child's father because he wasn't there for us. I lived with my eldest sister who was more like a mom to me, which is why she is mentioned in the story. She was the person I had with me when I had my C-section. She has been there for every moment of my son's life. My doctor said if I was going to go back to work, he recommended 4 to 6 weeks of healing time and rest, that I had to be put on light duty, and that I was not to lift more than the weight of my son, which was 6 pounds. So here's the story. I was rehired by a fast food company that was always extremely busy at each major point in the day. Lunch made over $800 between noon and 1 p.m., and dinner made over $700 from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Of note, the only reason I was rehired was because the hiring manager loved me to pieces. When I left the first time, she told me that I always had a job with her because she loved my work ethic. She said that I was the best worker she had in years. Nobody ever picked up extra shifts as quickly as I did. Nobody cared to learn as fast as I did. Since I had previous job experience, they wanted me to work the lunch rush. But I begged them to let me work dinner. Dinner would allow me to spend some quality time with my newborn, and my sister, who I lived with, would be home from her job to take care of my son while I worked. Now, I started a month after the C-section, right? Wrong. I started 2.5 weeks later. If I didn't, I couldn't be hired. I had actually gone back to my doctor and asked if his office would write up a full letter explaining my light duty requirements, and took it with me on my first day back. I walked into the manager's office expecting to see my hiring manager, or at least a manager I recognized. Enter in stupid manager, who had worked as an hourly employee at another location and thought she knew better than everyone else. I handed stupid manager my doctor's note, and she looked at me like I was holding a dirty baby diaper. I asked her to make sure the hiring manager sees it, and she doesn't respond. I shrug it off and walk to the back, where the break room was. I saw that all of the co-workers were the same from the last time I had worked there, and they all crowded around me to see the baby photos. I was crying the entire time because it felt like a homecoming. It felt like I was finally surrounded by a support system, until stupid manager screamed that we needed to get back to work. when there wasn't even a customer. We all scattered like flies and made ourselves look busy. I kept my phone in my pocket before clocking in and periodically checked it, always between customers, to make sure nothing had happened with my son while I was gone. I would think that most, maybe not all, managers would have understood that I hadn't been texting, just quickly checking for notifications. But not stupid manager. She hated it. She had been sitting in her office checking the cameras, and I supposed I checked my phone one too many times. Yay, postpartum depression and anxiety. Stupid manager comes flying around the corner at the speed of light and stares daggers at me. Hazel, what the hell do you think you're doing? You cannot be on the phone while you're clocked in. You should know this already. Now, I've never been one to deal well with being yelled at, so I just said I'm sorry. Some of my coworkers stood up for me, which again made me cry. Stupid manager apparently hated crying too. She turned back to me, shooting the same daggers into my soul. What the hell are you crying about now? Thankfully, a customer walked in, so she stormed off. I saw red. Within the hour, I watched her start to get ready to leave her shift, which I thought was a blessing. Of course, it wasn't. Enter lazy manager, who I had issues with the last time that I worked here. Not that I had said anything, she just never worked. She sat in the office staring at the cameras, eating food from the line, which the company said is illegal. You don't get free food, you get discounts on food. Did she ever pay for it? Not once. She wrote it off as the end of the day throwaway food. Lazy manager saw me and her face fell. "Oh, hey, Hazel," she said with disdain, put on my sweetest smile and attempted to make small talk with stupid manager. But they made a major mistake. They left the door cracked, and wouldn't you know, I work on the side of the line closest to the door where I could hear everything. This is how it went. Lazy manager. I thought hiring manager told her no. I guess not. She's been on her phone all day. Of course she has. She's the worst employee we've ever had. I'll call hiring manager and figure this out. I never disliked someone like I dislike her. She seems pretty lazy. Oh, here's her pitiful doctor's note. Ha, we'll see how that works. It's not like we've never had kids before. Now that fully pissed me off, but I bit my tongue. I waited for what I knew was coming. I knew exactly what I was going to do because I was just plain sick of being badmouthed by others. Stupid manager leaves and lazy manager calls me into the office. I was in the middle of making an order, but she is the manager after all. I left the poor person's order sitting right on the line and walked to the office. Yes, lazy manager? She doesn't even look up from the computer. Hazel, what is this doctor's note for? I just take my phone out of my pocket and try to show the pictures of my son. Oh, you had a kid? In a tone that implied that nobody would want to be with me or something. I smile sweetly and nod. A plan was working itself out in my head. Fast forward 4 days. Lazy manager hasn't been helping us close the store at all, and I've been getting home after 2 a.m. every day. From a place that closes at 10 on the weekdays, 11 on the weekend. I'm done. My sister can't keep taking care of my child like this, and it's completely unfair. Lazy manager is working again, and we're really busy. I go to put fries in the fryer because our fry cook is busy making chicken tenders. I open the little freezer besides the fryer and it's empty, which I knew it would be because I never saw anyone put in a new box. Huh, that sucks. Hey, we're out of fries out here, I yell. No response. Hey, coworkers, fry cook is busy and we need fries out there. Nothing. Odd. Oh well. Hey, lazy manager, we need fries out here. Lazy manager opens the office door. Get them yourself, Hazel. I walk over to the office. Lazy manager, I can't. My doctor said I can't lift more than 6 pounds. At this point, lazy manager rolls her eyes and just looks dead at me. Look, go get the damn fries out of the freezer now. 2 boxes. I don't care about this my doctor's note crap. Do it and stay the hell off your phone. And there it was, my opportunity for malicious compliance. I walk into the freezer and look at the box of french fries. I really shouldn't. This would be detrimental to my health according to my doctor. But lazy manager said so. Now, I noticed that morning that a couple of my stitches hadn't been dissolved completely yet. So I had already called and scheduled an appointment 2 weeks early. This was all lining up perfectly. I grabbed a fry box on the bottom shelf and shifted it to where I could read its weight. I wasn't supposed to be on my phone, but she obviously couldn't see me in the freezer, so I snapped a picture of the box. I sent it to my sister with the message, "Manager told me I have no choice but to do this myself. Doesn't believe my doctor's note at all. Can't respond. She won't let me use my phone anymore either." I made sure that the message was sent and then switched my phone off, grabbed the fry box and lifted it and carried it over to the little freezer 20 feet away. I'll say one thing about adrenaline. It definitely works to numb the pain until it wears off. I felt a wetness in my pants and excused myself to the break room. Not the bathroom, that was too private for this. I turned to where the cameras couldn't see me and looked in my pants. Blood. But from where? Oh, that's right, the stitches that hadn't started healing yet, but there was another pain that I hadn't experienced yet. I walked to Lazy Manager with the napkin covered in blood. Thankfully, the line wasn't anywhere near the office. I would never contaminate someone's food. I was immediately sent home to my sister, who was in a severe panic over the message. I called my doctor's office with 10 minutes to spare and explained the situation, and was scheduled for the following day, and was told to go to the hospital if the bleeding continued. My sister and I bandaged me up to the best of our ability, and I waited for my appointment. When my doctor found out why I picked up the fry box, he sounded more like a concerned father figure when he said, "I'll handle it." But I assured him that I had it myself. All I needed from him was another doctor's note. You see, I found out that the hiring manager, who was also the store manager, was lined up to become district manager, had just come back from vacation. She was actually scheduled for the following day, and I was supposed to work. I waddled into that store, in uniform, doctor's note clutched in one hand, the other hand grabbing every solid surface it could to absorb some of the shock of movement. She took one look at me and guided me to a chair in the break room, concern written all over her face. "Hazel, what happened?" So I told her everything. She asked me if I ever gave either manager a doctor's note, and I said I had. She couldn't find it, but she didn't need to. What Lazy Manager and Stupid Manager didn't know was that my sister had a printer that could also scan documents. And we had a weird feeling that we would need a copy of the first doctor's note. So not only do I have a new note clutched in my hand, but stapled to it was a copy of the original note that told the managers that I was supposed to be on light duty. Because if I ripped the stitch, it could only lengthen my healing process. The new note explained that since I was not given light duty, I not only ripped my stitch, but pulled a few muscles in my lower back. When hiring manager read both notes, she was furious. She checked the schedule, and when she saw that neither of the managers were working, she called them both in for a meeting. She asked if I would stay for said meeting and that I could sit in the office in her comfy desk while we waited. I took that seat and waited for the show. 30 minutes later, hiring manager was giving them an earful, telling them they had no right to discard doctor's notes, and that she would have never have told me to stop being on my phone. Turns out hiring manager had worked for this establishment when she had her youngest child, so she knew the anxiety of being away from a newborn for too long. I watched Stupid Manager get fired on the spot, but not Lazy Manager. Lazy Manager was demoted to line cook because hiring manager told her she needed to relearn some humility. She worked as a line cook at another store for about a month and was then fired for stealing food. That's where the original post ended, but the OP actually had some update. Final notes, when I first posted this, some people were wondering why I didn't sue the company. First, it didn't even cross my mind because I've never been through something like that. Second, when it was brought up by my best friend, my sister said it wasn't worth it for some reason. And third, I was more worried about the immediate need to provide diapers and formula for my son. If you were curious, hiring manager found alternative ways for me to work. She gave me a comfortable stool to sit at and trained me on the cash register. I got to sit there and take orders instead of walking around while going through another 2 months of healing. And I was given an extra meal a day through the company at her request. She also helped me go to the restroom every time I needed to go, gave me an extra break time, and if she couldn't help me, she made sure someone could. Maybe it was so she didn't have to worry about a lawsuit, but part of me thinks it's because she cared about me like a mother figure would, well before I had my son. My son and I are doing great. Yes, I knew my stitches weren't healed, and yes, my logical brain said, this is bad, don't hurt yourself for these people. But I also didn't realize that I would actually rip the stitches out of my body, nor that I could tear muscles that easily after a major surgery. I didn't ask, the doctor didn't tell, and my sister didn't know either. But let me know. Am I the jerk? Now, this was gangster. I've been someone to go above and beyond for malicious compliance in my day, but I've never went as far as literally hurting myself to make a point. My hat's off to this OP. Like the old saying goes, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Or in this case, a mother scorned. As for these dumb managers, they are all too real. If the theory of us living in a computer simulation is real, there must be a code to make a majority of managers stupid. For the most part, these types of managers only get these positions because they're friends with higher ups, or they've just been working at the place forever. I just hope anyone listening to this story doesn't have to deal with these types of managers on the daily. Karen boss desperately needed my uniform back the next day. No excuses. Okay, so a little backstory first. I'm a 20-year-old college student full-time and I'm working 23 plus hours a week on top of classes to make ends meet. I live paycheck to paycheck and have a car I am paying off. I used to work at a McDonald's in my hometown, but since I moved to live on campus, which is 45 minutes away from my old job, I wasn't willing to make the commute. So I decided to apply and got accepted to a small sandwich shop 10 minutes from my college. I started out great with plenty of hours, easy work, and fast days, till the old manager decided to switch stores. The new manager was one of the biggest Karens you will ever meet. They were bad, and when I say bad, I really mean it. She completely changed the procedure and made things so much worse. And when I have to stay over 2 to 3 hours after closing, she would burst in the next day yelling and screaming at the top of her lungs, "Stop staying late, you have to be out by 8:30. We won't pay you for any time past then." I have no choice because of the to-do list she gave me to close the store every night. Did I mention that I was alone? This was extremely time consuming, especially with no help. I was expected to stop serving at 8 p.m. and do the work of 5 people in 30 minutes. It simply wasn't doable. Hearing that I wasn't going to get paid for the time I already worked, doing a list of duties my manager gave me was pretty disheartening. Also, if I didn't complete everything on the manager's list by 8:30, I would be fired. So I couldn't just leave everything until the next day. There was just no winning. On top of the moment the manager switched, they decided they were giving people too many hours and cut me to 3 hours a week. That went on for 4 weeks until I decided enough was enough. $45 work weeks weren't even worth the time and effort it took to show up. So on one of my weekends, I was with my parents off campus and I was due to work that day. 3 hours, of course. My only day that week. I was shopping near said sandwich shop. It's located inside a Walmart. My mom and I were discussing for the last week how I should quit since it seems like they are trying to fire me without saying they are firing me. As if they want me to leave on my own so they wouldn't have to fill out the paperwork. Right then and there I decided, you know what? Screw that job and screw my entitled Karen boss. I sent her a text that I quit on the spot and to not expect me to come in for the night shift. She texted me back ranting about how I'm not giving her 2 weeks notice and I'll never be able to work at one of those sandwich shops again. At that point, I didn't care. I had already given up my brand new car of only 4 months because I couldn't pay my loan and insurance. It was a nice car too. It was a white shimmery 2016 Hyundai Sentra. I love that thing. I told her at some point during the week that I would try to get her that brand new uniform that they just gave me the week prior, a whole 3.5 months after I started working there. But I also warned her that my classes run until right before closing, and I didn't know when I would be able to do so. She texted me back in what I can only imagine was the snarkiest tone possible. "No, I really need that uniform back tomorrow." I told her that I'm sorry, but that may not be possible due to my school schedule, and I'm not willing to ditch a class to drop off a few pieces of clothing. She said, "No, you will bring it back tomorrow. Don't even try to lie to me. You were seen in the store the day you quit. No excuses." Okay then, she said no excuses. I didn't want to get into an argument with her over it. And knowing that she herself would be closing that day and my classes ended at 8 exactly, I'll happily comply. I made sure that I had arrived right as she was closing the lock on the gate. I was going to bring the clothes in a reusable shopping bag. I didn't have any throwaway bags, and since she couldn't take claim of my own bag, I was going to give her the clothes one piece at a time, knowing she would have to carry them out of the store, and just the thought of her having to juggle with them back home made me happy. When it came time to deliver my uniform to her, all the stars seemed to align perfectly. I arrived at 8:30, caught her on the way out, and I decided at the last minute to ditch the reusable bag for the outfit. As an extra touch of sweet, unplanned irony, it was raining outside. Hard rain, and the sidewalk was extra slippery and muddy. I just so happened to slip on my way in and landed chest first in the mud. I was mostly spared though, because the clothes were there to break my fall and absorb most of the filth. Dropping off the muddy, loose clothing and seeing her reaction watching her stomp her feet, wrenched in disgust holding clothes 10 feet away from her body, huffing and puffing, while marching out of the store in pure shock and disbelief, she didn't even have words for me. It was the sweetest revenge I've ever seen. This did mean I had to buy a whole new set of clothes and change in the Walmart bathroom, but it was worth it when I saw her reaction at the end. After I had returned to my dorm that evening, I had sent her a text saying simply, "Enjoy," and I blocked her number. Safe to say karma really did pay on my end, but let me know, am I the jerk? This is one of those malicious compliance that the OP went out of their way to make happen. I've never worked at this sandwich shop in the Walmart, or any food place for that matter, but I never thought you had to return uniforms. At least I never had that in my previous jobs. But I love that the Karen demanded the uniform be brought back in, but she never mentioned that it needed to be clean. This gets a thumbs up from me. My failure to plan is now your problem. So I work in customer service in the automotive industry. As part of the services, we offer guests that we perform a state-mandated car inspection so people can register their cars with the state. It's a simple process that can take about 15 minutes if you book an appointment with us. But every month we get flooded with people who forgot to do the inspection on the last week of each month. There's a mad dash of last-minute appointments so people can get in before the end of the month. Now, we don't make money off of this type of service. In fact, it's a state-set fee, and we realistically lose money doing these inspections on labor cost. I preface this to the state that doing the state inspection does not benefit my shop, but we do it because it helps our customers. Well, one day the front door opens to a male Karen coming in on a Friday afternoon midday. This distinguished gentleman, we'll call him Tim, walks in around 1 p.m. in the afternoon and slaps his keys on the countertop, informing my front counter teammate that he needs an inspection now. Understand that even though all of our appointments were booked up for the day a long time ago, we still bend over backwards to try to help someone out. We totally get that things don't always go according to plan, so we do what we can to help. That is, as long as you're a nice person. When you start trying to dictate how we're going to help you, that does not fly at my store. Tim decided that today he was going to do exactly that. After we advised him, he could either wait almost 2 hours where we can try to get him into a slot as we process our already scheduled appointments, or we could book an appointment for him next week. Tim let us know that booking an appointment the following week after the deadline was not an option for him. But he's got time right now, so he's going to generously give us 2 hours of his time, and we can figure out how to get him in. Cue malicious compliance. I stepped in to take over the conversation from my front desk counter staff, who has been dealing with him up until now. "Okay, sir, we'd be happy to help you. I'll get your keys out to a technician. You just have a seat and make yourself comfortable." Immediately, I walked the keys out to one of my technicians with explicit instructions. After explaining to my tech that Tim is acting like a dirty trash can full of poop, I gave the express instructions that we will not even touch his vehicle until 2 hours have passed. Mind you, as Tim sits in the lobby stewing. I have the pleasure of servicing several other customers who set their appointments days ahead of time. 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and even a 7-minute inspection for an all-electric car. Things are flowing so smoothly for all of the appointments that did things the right way, and it's showing on Tim's face. After the first hour, Tim finally has the courage to speak up. "I really appreciate y'all trying to work with me, but do you know how long it's going to be?" "No, Tim, you don't get to be nice now and try to expedite your vehicle. You don't get to be nasty to my staff and still get your way." "Sorry, Tim, we're still trying to get you in. Like I said, it's probably going to be 2 hours before we see your truck." Mind you, the lobby is totally empty, and all the customers have already been serviced early. It's perfect. Fast forward another hour and his multiple attempts to make small talk to amend his horrible manners / treatment to one of my staffers, his car is finally brought into the garage. Then moments later, my technician walks into the lobby with a giddy smile. "Boss, his truck needs wipers to pass the inspection. They're torn and they fell the vehicle." Passing on this wonderful news to Tim, he agrees to have the tech install some because of course he did not bring any of his own. At this point, I feel quite satisfied that Tim learned his lesson with a little additional help from the universe in him needing to also replace his wiper blades. But apparently the universe wasn't quite done with teaching Tim a lesson. His car still failed the inspection. The last part of the test is run by a computer that reads the internal control modules of the car. It's totally an automated process that can't be tampered with or affected by the inspector. The only thing that can interfere is if the car had its battery replaced and those control modules had been reset. But that's exactly what Tim did. Hours before coming in to see me, he replaced the battery and cleared those exact modules. So at the end of the day, Tim was his own worst enemy and failed his own car. Having to book an appointment for the following week, but with a little help from the universe, he hopefully learned a valuable lesson. The service workers are not your slaves. And to always tip your waiters. But let me know, am I the jerk? You gotta love when an entitled person gets what they deserve. I've worked in the automotive industry before and in retail, so I know how pushy customers can be. This is why every time I go out to eat or shop at a retail store or even get some work done on my car, I treat employees with the utmost respect possible. Because at the end of the day, they're just trying to do a job and I'm sure they want you gone as fast as possible as well. So, just let them work. Entitled boss threatens my job security, but she gets arrested for embezzlement. I remember this particular scenario and wanted to bring it up here. It's a long one, so grab your popcorn and drinks, because here we go. So one of my first IT jobs I worked was for a corporate headquarters of a Midwestern sandwich chain. My brother's best friend was the IT manager of this place and was given full reign to hire anyone he wanted. We had previously worked together in another place and he liked my work ethic. So he ended up asking me if I would take the job. Of course, I said yes, since I genuinely enjoyed working alongside this friend, and I thought it would be cool to report to him. Anyways, a few months go by and everything was going well. I had met and enjoyed most everyone in the IT department. Then one day, the CEO congratulates and welcomes a new CTO. This confused me as I always thought that my friend's boss was the CTO, but then I was told that he was actually an interim CTO this whole time. So being green and naive, I decided to take it upon myself to meet the new CTO. The conversation goes more or less like this. Hi, my name is Jerry. I am one of the help desk technicians here. It's my pleasure to meet you and I look forward to working with you. Sticks hand out to shake hands. CTO blankly stares at my hand, then back at me. Oh, yeah, so if you need any help or have any questions, I'll do my best to help. So just because I'm a woman, I need help? And what exactly can a help desk help me with? Don't offer help to me unless I ask for it. Got it? My friend saw this whole thing play out and was honestly shocked. To this day, the entire exchange still haunts me. In any case, I moved on and tried to stay out of the CTO's way. I decided I wanted to just do my job and work with my friend. The entire time I worked there, my friend had kept me in the loop with all of his projects and his work so that I could hopefully be successful in the field. Then, one day, when I get to the office, I am informed that my friend was fired by a demand of the CTO since he was not meeting expectations. Despite all the reports showing that his leadership and changes did in fact yield a very high rating for ticket closures and customer satisfaction. The same day, the CTO comes to the help desk room and walks up to me. She then says, "Hey, you worked alongside that manager, right? Well, I'm making you the interim manager since you know most everything that he was working on." I felt like it was two slaps to the face. One being that she didn't refer to me by name, and the other is that she gives me my friend's job the same day he was fired. A few weeks go by and I just experienced going from meeting to meeting. I keep getting told that performance ratings and customer satisfaction is dropping. In particular, the biggest gripe that was reported was that work orders were not getting any updates for days on end, and that requesters were beginning to feel like we were ignoring their issues. I tried to reply with a plan that would help alleviate this, but the CTO said, "We will make sure that this is fixed," and would not let me speak. After all those meetings, the CTO set up meetings with myself, the director of infrastructure, we'll call him Matt, and the previous interim CTO, we'll call him Joe. Okay, how are we going to fix this problem with the work orders? Well, I got a plan that should help with this. See, what I need is to do is to canvass the tickets and see if I needed a plan, I would have asked for it. I want an answer now. Okay, well, I'm trying to give you the answer, which is part of this plan. It's useless then. If you can't get the answer, any other ideas? At this point, we all stayed fairly silent and the CTO was just more or less rambling to herself. And at the end, her response was glorious. Okay, so moving forward, no matter what it is, I want every ticket to be updated immediately with everything that is going on with the request as it is being worked on. Everything that is going on with the request immediately as it happens? Are you sure about that? I feel like that's going to... I know what I said. If I had to repeat myself, consider yourself out of a job. Understood. She then proceeds to send an email summarizing almost everything that happened in the meeting. She then writes that I have no constructive information to provide, but again, see her plan there. It was then that it occurred to me. Cue malicious compliance. I go back to the help desk room to announce the immediate change. Hey everyone, I just wanted to give you a heads up that moving forward, you are to provide every work order with any and all updates possible. That includes anything from looking at the ticket to moving a laptop to typing on it. Just anything you do must be related and entered into a ticket. One of my texts says, you want everything in the tickets? Yup, you heard that right. Everything. As you work on the tickets, keep those updates coming. Which led another tech to say, but if we do that, we could potentially trigger spam filters. Also, it's going to flood the requester's mailbox. Did you mention this to the CTO? She didn't care to hear about it. It's apparently not constructive information. The other 4 technicians stayed silent until one of them said, a storm is brewing, this is gonna be fun. And we all laughed knowing what was going to happen. I went to the email that the CTO sent regarding the summary of our meeting and opened it in our window of the computer. Then I continued to do as she asked, and so did the other technicians. It wasn't even an hour before our updates were being blocked by the spam filters, and we started getting emails from requesters asking us why there were so many updates on the work orders. Others were asking to be removed from future ticket updates, and many demanding to speak to a manager regarding this sudden disturbance. I updated the IT help desk email with an automatic reply that said something along the lines of the following. Thank you for your message. If this is in regards to your ticket updates, rest assured that we have your best interest in mind. A new policy is in place to provide you with as much transparency to your IT requests. This is in hopes to provide you a better customer experience. Please rest assured that we are aware of the amount of tickets this may produce. We hope to provide further support to you and look forward to completing your request shortly. Company IT help desk. It was no longer after this that the CEO came into the help desk room and demanded to know what the hell was going on. I could tell he was ready to fire somebody when I calmly said, "Good afternoon, sir. We were simply following orders," and pointed at my screen to the email with my meeting summary. The CEO looked at me and growled. As we were walking, we walked past Matt, Joe's, and the CTO's office. Each time the CEO growling at them, "In my office now." We get in his office and the conversation goes like this. "What the hell is going on?" I will reiterate, I'm only following orders. "And what exactly were those orders?" Here is the email from the CTO regarding this order. "Sir, I can explain. I was just thinking that..." "And did no one stop to think what issues this would cause?" "Well, Jerry did try to explain a plan to the CTO. If I'm not mistaken, Jerry knows that if Exchange servers detect multiple updates coming out like this in a small time window, it triggers the spam blockers. And that's why my plan was to update each ticket only once a day, rather than after every single thing that was done towards the request. I asked you to update at the end of the day with everything that happened with the work orders. According to your summary, you did ask for ticket updates as they occurred, and Jerry's team provided this. Why did you not listen to Jerry's plan of action?" "Well, sir, I have been working in the field since before 2000. What can someone like Jerry provide me with?" "Well, he can help you with the information to tell you why your idea just caused the company a ton of money, since now our Exchange server got overloaded." When I was talking about canvassing, I was trying to say that I wanted to reach out to each location's manager to compile a list of tickets to update in a scheduled manner, rather than doing them all at once. But since you wouldn't listen to me and even threatened to fire me, I had to comply with your plan. I cannot believe that this is happening. Why am I being targeted here? At this point, the CEO asked Matt, Joe, and me to leave while he had some words with the CTO on what teamwork means. Several minutes later, the network and infrastructure team was able to reboot the Exchange servers and remove the IT help desk mailbox from the spam filters. I later provided a mass email update to the organization, apologizing for any inconveniences that were caused, and that I would be reaching out to provide plan support. I would soon find out that the CTO was placed on unpaid leave until further investigations were pending. I ended up quitting a few months after that, since after the incident, the CTO was frequently trying to take her grudge out on Joe, Matt, and me. I did leave reporting the incident to HR. I did find out later that the CTO was terminated and arrested for embezzlement. Now, the OP did actually have a pretty big update. I am genuinely shocked at how much this blew up. Thank you all. Well, I suppose I will do my best to tie up some loose ends. For starters, for those who don't believe that this is real, there are actually court documents out there regarding the embezzlement issues. I won't link them since I would rather not get this story traced back to me, but just think really hard of some of the most popular United States Midwestern sandwich shops and look for embezzlement. You might find your proof. Another thing, for anyone who thinks that I was being respectful towards the CTO on my introduction, no, it wasn't because of chivalry. I respect everyone equally, despite their status or position, or power, I suppose. When I started at this company, everyone was super friendly and genuinely liked working with one another. So greeting new staff in a friendly manner and offering to provide assistance was just the norm. So the fact that she came in with that large of a chip on her shoulder and further accused me of being sexist really threw me off. Furthermore, to clarify, that experience haunts me every time I speak to any female staff and thoughts race through my head. It makes me wonder if what I did or said could be deemed sexist, despite knowing damn well that I'm being respectful and professional. Okay, now on to the juicy bits, the embezzlement. When I found out about the embezzlement, I had already jumped ship from this place and moved on to a much better company. At the new company, I actually ended up poaching some of the best staff from the previous company to come work alongside me. Although I had almost no connections left at the Sandwich HQ place, some of the people I had brought over still had quite a number of connections back there. When I left, the company was no longer as friendly as it used to be. It was obvious that it was going down the toilet and overall becoming toxic, completely opposite from the image they try to portray. So one day I came into work and one of my buddies just shoots out of his chair, walks over to my desk and opens Google Chrome, and types in a certain set of words and hits search. The top item was a public court document. I read through it and found out everything. I reached out to Joe to see if he was still there. Sure enough, he had left a few months after the scandal. He informed me of what happened. So it turns out that Mark and one of his employees were taking money from one of the vendors to be able to basically remain as one of the company's utility companies across the US. At this time, the CTO was looking to switch to a different provider, but this particular provider did not want to lose the company since it was their biggest contract. So the CTO made a deal with the head of that provider company where they were suddenly accepting unreported funds. What ended up happening though was that one of these employees reported his earnings in his taxes, which somehow ended up getting back to the company. I'm not sure how this whole part worked out, I'm not a tax guy. This is where I called my contact from the financial department. My contact had told me that she saw the reported income and that it did not add up at all. His income basically was doubled, but she worked alongside payroll and they knew his wages. The fact that he reported almost double his income could get him both and the company in serious trouble. So she did the only thing she could do, which was have an audit done. They reported this to the CEO and agreed to bring in an outside auditor, just to avoid any sort of possible conflict of interest. The auditor then came back to find where the extra funds came from, being a special contract with Mark, his employee, and the CTO that signed off on it. They worded it very carefully so that it would go under the radar, but that taxes would be charged to the company. A week after the audit, some officials arrived at the company and arrested those 3 individuals. I'm not sure if they served jail time or something, but they sure as hell were walked out in handcuffs. Oh, and to answer one final question, for those wondering how the hell the CTO got that job position in the first place, she was friends with the CEO. She apparently is still out there being a CTO to this day. At my current job, one of my workers asked me if I knew this person's name. And I kid you not, I was like, how the F do you know her? Only to later find out the coworker worked for the CTO and hated her. My coworker was going through some major issues while at that company, and then she opened up about it. The CTO threatened to fire her as she was just a liability waiting to happen. My coworker is in safe hands now where she gets treatment and therapy as she needs it. But let me know, am I the jerk? This story took a turn I wasn't expecting. At first, I thought it was just going to be a simple malicious compliance against the manager, but then to find out the same manager was doing some shady business after the OP left, now that was a story. One thing that did annoy me was the automatic sexist comment from the CTO. I understand that women face a lot of hardships in the world, let alone the workplace. But reactions like this do mess with your mind if you are a dude that is just trying to be helpful or professional. I once dated a girl that was very similar to this CTO because she would never let me pay for her. Like, I'm totally down with women that want to pay for themselves, but I couldn't even try to do it out of kindness without her saying, I'm a woman and I can take care of myself. That relationship didn't last too much longer for a bunch of reasons. My job tells me to vote with my feet, so I do just that. In my old role, compliance for a financial institution, we used to be split into two groups, investigation and alerts. Alerts did the first level of processing of items that came in and then determined whether they should be escalated for further review, sent to investigations, or closed out. Alerts was expected to get through 8 to 15-ish items per day, depending on referral channels and other factors. While investigations was lucky in some areas to get through 2 per day, some cases could take days or weeks to do. I worked in investigation, especially within Treasury, which was considered the most complex area, and I primarily dealt with high scrutiny / high complexity items like law enforcement referrals. I was also main trainer for Treasury and had created all of the training materials and processes. Additionally, I worked as the point of contact / representative on the procedure management group, so I knew them inside and out. What it boils down to is I made myself the keystone species of the department. I'll bet inadvertently. As happens with any organization, there was an ebb and flow of employees in our area, but for the most part, we stuck around because we were treated fairly, enjoyed our work, and had senior leadership who actually tried to understand what we did and why we did it. We weren't dealing with people who thought they knew better or who would make arbitrary decisions for the sake of implementing change and saying that they did something. Sure, it wasn't perfect, but it worked pretty well. That all changed when they decided to merge alerts and investigations together and make everyone do everything. Things went downhill pretty quickly, especially because the leadership that was given control was from alerts. As far as they were concerned, a case is a case is a case. It's not. And you should be able to get through all things quickly. You can't. And they're all created equally. They weren't. They put undue pressure on folks to get through the caseload far faster than was feasible, if you do it right anyways, and removed all specializations, which made it incredibly difficult to get into the groove of the work because different areas had different expectations and procedures. To add to that, they promoted people who had no business being elevated and ignored tenured investigators who should have been first up. All that did was piss off the good employees and create a whole bunch of post-turtles in leadership roles. As one would expect, attrition skyrocketed. They weren't paying us nearly enough to deal with this BS, so people left for better internal and external roles at alarming rates. When the pandemic hit, we were, for the most part, stuck. Hiring freezes galore, and there was always a fear of leaving, then getting screwed and being jobless during the disaster that was the world. A bit more background, at work, I have always had a reputation for honesty and for speaking my mind, often to the chagrin of senior leadership. As far as I'm concerned, you can't complain about something if you don't try to fix it. So when everything was at peak awfulness, I said something on a call with the aforementioned senior leadership, knowing that it was unlikely anything was going to change, but at least I would know I tried. I was later pinged by one of the managing directors in our overarching department, not up to my direct reporting line, but in the same organization. We'll call him C. I worked with C a number of times over the years. He had a rocket strapped to his butt and was perfectly content to ride that puppy until he could go no further. He is definitely a bit of a yes man, but that's what genuinely happens when you're in that type of role. I am unlikely to ever be a yes woman because it's not my personality, but it takes all kinds. And you never know what might happen in the future. When C pinged me, he asked me if I could chat and give him some more details about the situation. I knew I had nothing to lose, so we go on a call and I explain the problems and my opinions on the proposed solutions. Revert back to specialization in case types, pay industry standards, have leadership work on acquiring a better understanding of the job so as to be able to make more inferred decisions, etc. Nothing unreasonable. Though I know that it was unlikely any of this would be done, C's response? Vote with your feet. For those who never have heard this expression before, it basically means to quit. About what I expected, but I was impressed that he went right out and said it, especially because we both knew the whole department would be screwed if I left. I'm sure he figured I would never leave. After all, I had stayed for almost 8 years already, even though the awfulness didn't truly start until fairly late in the game. Fast forward a couple of months to summer 2021. I had been focusing on finding another role. I had been even before talking to C, but this gave me renewed incentive. I was being particular about what I applied for because I didn't want to leave for the sake of leaving, especially knowing any internal move would mean I'm stuck there for a year and I didn't want to risk screwing myself out of something perfect by jumping the gun. My caution paid off, and I was offered an amazing internal opportunity that would pretty much fit me like a glove. I kept my move quiet for a variety of reasons, only telling my manager, but I knew it would eventually make it up the chain. I just wanted to keep it as quiet as possible, as long as possible. Well, a week or so before I was scheduled to start my new role, I got pinged from C asking me to hop on a call, and whether he could convince me to stay. They couldn't. I got on the video call, and when he asked me why I was leaving, I looked at him and said, "Well, C, I'm going to do what you told me to do." He gave me the Cocker Spaniel look, complete with head tilt, and I just smiled and said, "I'm voting with my feet." The satisfaction I got from the look on his face when he made the connection brought me so much joy. He was completely dumbfounded. It was just, mwah, chef's kiss. But let me know, am I the jerk? It's crazy how we can be stuck at our jobs for so long before we realize it's time for a change, and usually it's a manager that gets you to make that change. I've said it a million times on the Jerk channel before, but I worked at my last job for years until a manager that hated me sealed the deal of me wanting to quit the company to try to make content full time. I can't tell you how many times I've stayed at a place because I liked my manager, but the moment I hated them, I was out. My boss forced me to work with an injury and I ended up bleeding on the job. Basically, I was working for a casual pizza chain, the one you can't out pizza, and I had to call out for a shift to go to the hospital as I was a victim of some domestic violence and injured my arm. The managers were fine with it, although out of the 4 I spoke to, none of them asked if I was okay, but that's a different matter. I went to the hospital and the doctor looked at me and put a band-aid over the wounds in my arm. Also, not to do any heavy lifting and to use my arm as little as possible for a couple of days. I questioned whether he could just glue the wound or stitch it, but he refused. I have no idea why it 100% needed to be glued, but my regular doctor said much the same when I showed up with the injuries nearly 2 weeks later as it still hadn't healed. But after I got to my house from the hospital, I rang my store manager and told him I would only be able to do light duties for a couple of weeks, knowing the doctor at the hospital was wrong. And he said that that wasn't a problem and he appreciated that I was still willing to work. Anyways, I went back to work 2 days after the injuries occurred. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have been going back to work, but I needed money and I wasn't going to get it anywhere else. As soon as I got there, the manager, not the store manager, let's call them Tammy, told me I would be on dispatch, cutting and boxing all the pizzas and sides. I apologized and explained that I wouldn't be able to do that as the pans can be quite heavy, and the doctor told me not to use my arm. I also showed her the bandage I had wrapped around my arm. Tammy asked why I even came to work then, and I explained that I told the store manager about my circumstances and that they said they would be happy for me to do light duty. Tammy rolled her eyes and told me to answer the phones and serve customers instead, which I was happy to do. We got quite busy and dishes started piling up, and Tammy told me to get on wash up, but I had to remind her of my arm and suggested it probably wasn't a good idea to put a fresh wound that was still bleeding slightly in water that was being used to clean dishes. Tammy rolled her eyes and said she was going to the office and she would be back in 20 minutes and that I better have done all the dishes and put them away. I tried to explain that I wouldn't be able to lift the fresh pans out of the sink, but she ignored me and said my arm couldn't be that bad or the doctor would have glued the wound or given me stitches, and that she wanted the work to be done. Cue the malicious compliance. I started doing the dishes and was very careful to lift an amount that I could handle with one hand despite not being very safe. 10 minutes later, Tammy yelled that I wasn't moving fast enough and that I needed to use 2 hands, so I lifted up a large pile that I could usually carry quite easily with 2 hands, but in this case my arm went numb and I dropped them. And in reflex, I tried to catch them, which completely busted the wound open and blood started dripping everywhere. I quickly bandaged my arm again and started to clean up the blood, but one of the customers had started yelling that I needed help and Tammy came and told me to move out of the way. She spent the rest of the night cleaning the dishes as the store manager had checked the cameras and had seen me doing the dishes and told her that they needed to be redone with clean water. As I continued doing light duties I had been assigned aside from the number of admin tasks that I normally did, which for some reason she refused to allow me to do. I found out later that Tammy didn't go home until 1 a.m. and kept 2 other staff there to help her when we closed at 10. because she wasn't able to get her work done, plus the work she refused to let me do, done on time. But let me know, am I the jerk? Remind me to never go to this OP's hospital because I can't believe a doctor didn't glue or stitch something that clearly needed to be done. But that actually doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I did have one instance where I had to go to urgent care because I could not get my nose to stop bleeding one time, and it was by far one of the worst experiences I've ever had in my life. The stupid doctor that was there tried to plug my nose up with balloons? I don't know if you're in the medical field, but there's these balloons that they can shove up your nose that feel like they go to your brain, and they put air in them to put pressure to try to stop the bleeding. I didn't suffer from panic attacks at the time, but I'm pretty sure I was getting close to having one during this episode. I was almost on the verge of tears, I was having trouble breathing, and this dumb doctor wanted to put another balloon in my other side of my nose. I pretty much had to tell him to go screw himself, and he was kind of mad that I was getting teary-eyed. Literally one of the most insensitive doctors I've ever been around. Anyways, I think it is still pretty crazy that this terrible boss even knew that, cuts that are pretty serious need to be glued or stitched. Also, could you imagine being the customer who was waiting for their order and finding a customer at the restaurant bleeding in the back? They're probably never gonna eat there again. And I don't blame them. Entitled Car Dealership tells me to go to their competitor and waste my time because they won't give me the price listed on their website. This took place 8 years ago when I was buying my first new car. Not just a new to me car. I spent a good amount of time researching the options available, both in terms of models from other manufacturers, options of packages for the car in which I was most interested. So I knew exactly what I wanted coming in the door. In 2014, car dealers' websites quite hadn't gotten to the level of borderline bait and switch trickery you see these days. So if a dealer's website said that they had a particular car on the lot at the particular price, they almost certainly did. There were several in the region that matched what I was looking for, one specifically at my existing dealership. It was one of the largest in the Northern Virginia area for this particular brand. I had a reasonable good experience with their service department overall, and I'd figure I'd give their sales department a chance to shine. That was my first mistake. I showed up on a Wednesday after work. It was in early June, so with the mercury being in the upper 90s, I was dressed in a comfortable but still very presentable combination of a polo shirt with khaki shorts. When I entered the sales side of the dealership, I could see what appeared to be all the salespeople in the conference room laughing and joking while taking scissors to the tie of one of the men present. Later on, I found out that this was a rite of passage after making your first sale. I waited around for a minute or two, as the conference room had glass walls and it would be impossible not to notice me, as I'm not exactly a small fellow at 6 feet 6 inches tall. When no one came out to greet me, I went up to the receptionist desk and said, "Hi, I'm interested in model of car, and there's one in stock I'd like to see." Her response without even looking up from her phone was, "Okay." I stood there for another 20 minutes or so and then politely asked, "Would you be able to show me that car?" This finally prompted her to look up from her phone. She looked at me up and down, scoffed a bit, and said she would go and get someone. I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, hoping that this thing would turn around. That was my second mistake. The receptionist came back with what looked like the youngest, most wet behind the ears salesperson they could find, as evidently I wasn't worth the time of a more experienced folk. I explained that I was interested in a car that their website said they had in stock and provided him with the printout, showing the stock number, price, and all the pertinent details. It took him a while to find the car on the lot, but after a brief test drive, I knew it was what I wanted and began the sales process. I had a trade-in which had been primarily serviced by them and which I had already had a written offer from CarMax, so I knew how much I would receive for it. He quoted me just over half of that figure. When I pointed out that I could get several thousand more by taking it to CarMax just up the road and had a written offer from them for that specific amount, he went on and got his sales manager, who offered to drive me there and pick me up afterwards, but that he wouldn't match what CarMax offered. I was a bit surprised that they didn't want a nice used car to sell for themselves. It was 6 years old, top of the line, reasonable mileage, and serviced by them specifically. But again, I cut them more slack than they deserved. When we got to the price, things really fell apart. He quoted me a price that was several $1,000s higher than what was displayed on their website. When I showed him the printout again with the noticeably lower price, he looked to the sales manager for guidance. The sales manager immediately took the line that the price listed includes all of the available rebates and special offers that you may not be able to qualify for. I was now frustrated and showed them the printouts from the other sales dealers in the area that had a similar price shown and said that if they weren't willing to honor the price listed on their website, I would just go to the next closest dealer that had that model in stock at that price. His response sealed the deal for me. Go ahead and waste your time at the competing dealership. We won't hold it against you when you come back here. I told them, okay, thank you for your time. I'm going to the competing dealership. And I got up and I left. No one stopped me and the receptionist said nothing as I walked past her to the parking lot to drive to the other dealership. When I got to the competing dealership, it was already around 8 p.m. as I had spent a fair amount of time at the first dealership, and Northern Virginia traffic has never been known for being reasonable. I had a salesperson approach me immediately upon entering the dealership, and I explained, I've just come from the first dealership and want to buy this particular model of car. Both of you have the car in stock with the options I want. They wouldn't give me at the price shown on their website. If you will, I'm ready to sign on the dotted line right now. The salesperson immediately took me to his office, verified that they had the car, and confirmed that yes, the price on their website was accurate and I could walk out the door with that price. We started the process, and when we got to the trade-in, I further explained how the other dealership tried to lowball me on the trade. He said if I could produce a written offer from CarMax for that price I mentioned, that they would match it. I gave him the paperwork, and without any further discussion, he agreed that he would match that. And then we just moved on to financing. I hadn't gotten this far with the other dealer, but I had already lined up financing through my credit union. He asked if I was willing to see if the F&I guy could match or even beat that figure. I agreed to let him try, and he came back with a rate that was 50 BPS lower. Needless to say, I was already very happy with these people, but this definitely sealed the deal. Right as I was finishing the paperwork, the salesperson from the first dealership texted me to ask me if they would give me the car at that price. I responded back that they would, and I was finishing up the paperwork at that very moment. He immediately tried to call me and then texted me saying that they would give it to me for $500 less. I responded to his text saying that I had already signed the paperwork and that he had just lost the sale. Once the paperwork was complete, the exceptionally pleasant and helpful salesperson at my new dealership spent an additional half an hour after the dealership had closed for the night running me through some of the features of the car and showing me how the infotainment system worked. This was completely above and beyond what I expected, as I thought I would just be reading a 300-page user manual to figure out on my own. I drove home that night with my new shiny car, a very happy camper. The next day, I decided to rub a little salt in the wounds of that first dealership. So I drove there straight from the office. For context, I work in the banking industry, and at that point, it was still very much business formal dress. I showed up in my suit with my briefcase and had people falling all over themselves trying to help me, including the receptionist who clearly remembered who I was midway through me asking for the particular salesperson that I dealt with the previous day. She offered me a seat and asked if I wanted some coffee while she went to get him, and I said politely, "No thank you, I won't be here long." She somewhat quietly and sheepishly responded that she'd be right back with the salesperson very shortly. There was a couple in the waiting room area who seemed to be a bit displeased that they had been waiting for a salesperson, but I got one the moment I walked in the door. No more than a minute later, the salesperson and his manager came out. The salesperson recognized me and with a look of defeat on his face, shook my hand and asked how I was doing today. Before I had the chance to respond, the sales manager spoke up to introduce himself as if I had not spent an hour and a half with him the previous day. After I reminded him that I was there yesterday and that he said that it would be a waste of my time to go to the competing dealership because they would never give me the car I wanted at the price shown on their website, his demeanor quickly pivoted back to the snotty, insolent person I had dealt with the previous day. He proceeded to ask, "Well, did they?" with a bit of a sneer. I said nothing but turned to the side and clicked the remote for my new car so the horn would give off a few chirps. He said, "Good for you," in a rather curt tone and walked away, leaving the poor salesperson on his own. I shook that salesperson's hand, thanked him for his time, and turned around to leave. The receptionist spoke up as I walked past her and asked in a rather chipper voice if I needed any further assistance. I politely responded that no, the other dealership had provided me exactly what I needed and what I was looking for. To make things just a little bit better, as I passed a couple sitting in the waiting area, I saw them exchange looks with each other that seemed to say, perhaps we should go to that other dealership too. I said nothing further and walked out of the building wearing the smile of a winner. But let me know, am I the jerk? Man, I cannot tell you how much I was hoping that this guy was gonna go back and rub it in the other dealership's face after he got his new car. So when I read that he did it, I did have a huge grin on my face. I've stated a few times on the Jerk channel that the car buying process can be horrible and that I've had my own bad experiences. But I also had an experience similar to the OP here where I was treated with respect and was given an even better deal than I was expecting. Sometimes you gotta walk through a lot of crap to end up where you wanna be. Don't wanna pay me for my work? Alright, I'll undo it then. Not exactly sure if this is a malicious compliance or pro-revenge, but here we go. I know a lot of people don't usually name the companies in these posts, but I'm doing it because I've had many issues with them and everyone should be warned. So I have to say this first, beware of working with the delivery service Shipt. Today I picked up an order for delivery. I had gone promo, money add-on, on Shipt. It was for delivery in a town that was 15 minutes from the store of purchase. Alright, not too bad for 16 bucks, especially since I lived 10 minutes from the town I was delivering to. I'll take it. I go to the store, receive the groceries, and I'm on my way. I send a text to the customer that I'm on my way and will reach them before X amount of time. No response, so I give a quick call. It does a weird thing and ends. Doesn't even go to voicemail. Whatever. I sent them a text. Get to the house, knock, no answer, leave the bags outside the door and walk away. When I make it to my car and I start it up, a woman pokes her head out of the porch door as I'm about to leave. She was a very lovely woman and I thank her for her kindness. She waves me down, looking highly confused, so I, unfortunately, stop the car and get out. Woman asks me what this is. Why, that's your order, ma'am, I say, looking happily. I didn't order anything, she says. Oh no. Did anyone else in your... Nope. Oh, no. So there is a wrong address on the delivery. I've never dealt with this before, and I have to leave to catch a movie with friends in 30 minutes. Cue me going door to door at each house on this small street while reaching out to Shipt support and while trying to call the customer again. Does the same weird thing with the phone, and I give up on that. Proceed to knock on doors. Nope, nobody's. Nope. Alright, I just have to move on. Shipt's suggestion? Just drive back and return it. Oh no, Shipt, I am a delivery contractor. I am not a volunteer nor am I charity. I am hired by you to fulfill deliveries. As far as I'm concerned, I have delivered to the address on file. I am not reaching into my bank account to correct someone else's mistake. For the total extra 30 minutes round trip, I will need $10 on top of the initial pay. Thank gas for being so expensive. They respond with no, and they say that they'll give me $8.10. I respond with no, and say I have plans in 10 minutes, what should have been 30, mind you, that I will now miss. $8.10 will not cover the gas and wear and tear for the extra 30 minutes. I will need no less than $10, or I will leave them on the curb of the noted delivery address, 580 blank street. They tell me that they'll give me $5 and that they can't do any more than that. Wait a minute. $5 on top of the additional $8.10 to make it $13.10 on top of what I'm being paid, or just an extra $5? I wanted everything in writing specifically because I knew Shipt was going to try to do what they did next. Oh yes, $13.10, but we can't do any more, they say. Fine, I'll return to the store now. I go to the store and do the whole return process, get in contact with Shipt as they directed me to with the requested information. I get a message from Shipt on my phone to the effect of, your order has been canceled and 2080 issued to your account. What? I contact Shipt saying that I'm confused and say that it looks like they're giving me only $5 on top of the original payment when they said I would be compensated for $13.10. I was told, oh, we won't give you any more than $5. But you already... Is there a manager I can speak to? Nope, $5. Take it or leave it. Alright, fine. Don't want to pay me the agreed upon wage? That's a breach of contract, meaning you never actually paid me for this return. So what did I do? I marched right back into the store, asked the worker who had taken the return what she had done with it, snatched the bag up, strode up to the manager, informed them of what was happening, and told them since I wasn't being paid to return the groceries, I would be taking them back to the last place I was contracted and paid to deliver them, 580 blank street. I told him if he wanted to be recompensated for the groceries, he should charge Shipt, as they were not willing to pay to have them returned. I messaged Shipt from my car informing them of this and gave them 30 minutes, yep, plans definitely ruined, it's now 2 hours later, to rescind their offer and pay me what they actually agreed to and owed me. Had to reach out 2 separate times because the first girl, despite being very polite, would not go to anyone else, such as management, to ask for an exception to this policy considering they had literally told me that they would pay me more. Actually, they had the gall to ask if I had taken the items I had returned, and all I had to say in response was, "Did you pay me to return them?" Second girl was much more helpful, reached out to her team to see if anything could be done. Ship still wouldn't be swayed, but I thanked her profusely for at least trying. So in the end, they said they wouldn't do any more than $5. I told them, alright, I rejected that offer, just pay me the original delivery because $5.80 is where they'll be. You can pay another ship shopper $15 to come get them. Drove back, it was on my way home, and dropped them off and left. I'm not a charity, I don't do work for free, and I certainly don't pay to work. I'm going to be messaging ShopRite corporate directly along with the NJ Labor Board because this is not the first issue with wages I've had with Shipt, and honestly, ShopRite should seek compensation from them. Have fun paying for more than $13.10 of groceries that are now rotting on the curb, Shipt. Side note to anyone who may say, you're being entitled. No, I'm not. It's not entitled to expect an agreed upon wage. It is extortion to expect me to work for less than agreed upon. Imagine you accepting an order from a delivery service, fulfilling that obligation, and suddenly they decide to pay you less than half for the completed order. Or you're going to work at a job and they suddenly cut your pay without any notice or agreement upon your part. As I explained to them, I never would have returned the groceries for $5 because it wasn't my mistake. I would have returned them no problem if it was my mistake, but it wasn't. And I would be paying to return them. Plus the missed plans, plus the lost time. So no, I'm in no way in the wrong here and I don't care what anyone else thinks. But let me know, am I the jerk? I'm on the side of the OP here. I don't do work for less than I'm compensated for. I understand that there's a lot of people that believe work is work and you need to do what you're hired to do. But when I'm hired to do something, I expect to be paid properly for it. This is a two-way street. Too often big corporations just abuse their workers to get the most profit and they love the work is work crowd. At some point, someone has to stand up, right? Entitled Karen says I know nothing about home goods because I'm a man. Many moons ago, I worked in a department store. It was a weekend contract gig while I was at university. It had departments for a variety of things, and for no particular reason, I ended up in the basement of homewares. No grumbles from me, money, even if it was minimum wage, is money. Work was easy and my team was awesome. First week there, I recall someone saying, retail would be great if it wasn't for the customers. I was saddened by hearing that. What a morose mentality to have for a place you spend most of your waking week. It took me a few years to find out that it was 100% true. The amazing customers absolutely do not outnumber or overshadow the monsters. One thing in retail I didn't realize was how amazingly helpful a good memory is. And believe me, back then especially, I had a phenomenal memory. We had to type in dissection codes and prices into a printer for barcodes and place them on stock. I very quickly got a reputation. See, most people would remember their specialty codes. They were about 15 digits long. A few seasoned withered husks with manager name tags would remember a few other specialty codes. I had them memorized for the entire basement. 7 departments, hundreds of codes. They were formulaic per department, so once you remembered each department's formula, you just had to remember the last 4 digits per dissection. After a while of being noted for this, I got moved from cook shop, global knives, Asasi teapots, etc., into home care electronics, vacuums, pressure washers, and irons. You'd think a good memory would be helpful for printing labels. I was like a walking thesaurus on that stuff. I didn't gloat, but colleagues would use me often. Quicker to get the die-by flaw than go into an office and check the catalog or Google or something. Warrant info, user specs, power ratings, maintenance routines, I had all of it. I did enjoy the prestige. I wasn't a jerk about it either. I happened to be perfectly positioned to excel in this because of my memory. I would gladly help out people rather than salesperson them, if I could. That 900-pound machine, what would you use it for? Yeah, you could get that from this 100-pound machine instead. I didn't get commission, and I brought return customers who liked me helping them. People liked a passionate teenager helping them with all the knowledge I could muster. One woman even wrote me a letter saying she would send flowers, but didn't for the fear of upsetting my wife, if I had one. She was about 7 decades older than me, bless her heart, but I digress. Malicious compliance time. One day a woman came in. This was in the 2000s, but by today's standards, a Karen. Instant hatred of everything and everyone. My job is to help customers, so her distaste for existence and pleasure for misery really mattered? Not at all. She is picking up various different irons on a shelf, inspecting them and looking at them in depth. These things can be used in home, and some of the models we stock could be used professionally. They started at expensive and went up to crazy money. It was pretty normal, and I would have to go through all of the specs for customers. If you are going to part with 249 pounds for an iron, you want to know what you are getting for your money. I get it. Anything I can do to help you, madam? She looks at me like I am a fart that has just gotten into the elevator with her. I want to buy an iron. Way to state the obvious, but the customer is always right, so I smile and go on. What type of iron are you looking for? Are you using this at home or professionally? It's for me to use. I am the woman of the household. Now, the way she stressed woman wasn't a gripe at her lot in life. It was more like when someone reminds you that this is their turf, their specialty, their baby. Hey, no problem by me. I'll see if I can help with that. No problem at all. This model here is normally used commercially, but you cannot access the water tank. Since it generates a lot of pressure, you have to buy these CalStop cartridges to prevent limescale buildup. Otherwise, the machine can break, and it won't be covered by your warranty. The benefit is it has a dry steam boost function for dresses, curtains, etc. without soaking them. By comparison, this one over here has a cartridge water chamber, which is easy to manage. However, yeah, can you get me a woman? Perplexed, I wonder what I said wrong. I needn't wait longer to find out. She saw the look on my face and went, "It's just that a woman really gets these things, you clearly wouldn't know." At this time, I'm chanting in my head, "Customer is always right, customer is always right," and managing my breathing to stay composed. "No problem, madam. Allow me to get my colleague Doreen to help you then." Now, the department was built around big pillars, irons on the east face, vacuums on the south and west face, till and accessories on the north face. So I walk over to the corner where the till is, and I got Doreen to go help this delightful woman who decided I didn't know what I was talking about. I headed around the west face to cover vacuums. Not 2 minutes later, I hear Doreen heading towards me saying, "Honestly, you need my colleague. They are the absolute expert on irons, and they know so much more about them than me. They will be able to find you the perfect iron." The Karen's face as she realized it was me that she was being brought to as the expert on irons was priceless. She fumbled a quick question on the Murphy-Richards unit to justify coming back to me, and then quickly hit the escalator to get the hell away from the awkwardness she had generated. This was an amazing moment, but let me know, am I the jerk? I related to this story so much since I used to work retail and can 100% agree that retail would be just fine if there wasn't customers. I never had a problem with restocking shelves or keeping an area clean. It was having to deal with Karens that was the worst part of the job by a mile. Also, it was funny that the OP mentioned that people liked when a young, knowledgeable person spoke to them about their items. This was the same for me when I worked in electronics. I often got asked about the best TVs or office supplies from customers, and since I had a lot of knowledge with electronics, they usually left pretty happy. Retail can be a cool place to work, but the bad people can ruin that part very quickly. Entitled table guests make me cry and break down at work. So I have bipolar disorder, and it hasn't interfered with my work until this past month. I told my boss I might need some time off, and he's been incredibly supportive, and so has everyone else. Anyways, I had a 5-top table the other day, and only 2 of them were there. They had ordered martinis, and for whatever reason, the bartender was not making them. She was super slammed, so I let my table know that it was definitely going to take a minute. 10 minutes go by and no martinis. I asked her, and she says she's working on it. I go back to the table to let them know and thank them for their patience. I turn around and see I've been sat a 4-top, so I greet them and get their drinks. When I get back with their drinks, they say that they're ready to order, so I get that done. As I'm walking away to check on the martinis, which still aren't up and it's been about 20 minutes, the lady from the 5-top table comes and says, "Hey, the rest of our party is here and we're like ready, so why are you just standing around?" I apologized and went to their table. I get to the table and the other lady rudely asked me if I was good. They asked about the martinis and I said I had just heard something about the bartender running out of martini glasses. I was about to apologize again and offer them something else, or they could just wait. We should be restocked in about 15 minutes. Instead, she cut me off and said, "Why the freak wouldn't you tell us you're out of martini glasses? We've waited 30 minutes. We could have gotten something else." At that point, I just said okay because I guess she didn't understand that we needed to wash them. The lady who had just arrived with her 2 kids ordered for the 3 of them. Very simple orders that I repeated as she was telling me. After I say I got it, all she tells me is that she needs me to repeat the order because she doesn't think that I got it right. I repeat this basic order back and she doesn't respond. I got the rest of the orders and walked away. Still no martinis. At this point, I'm in the back literally starting to cry and started yelling about the whole thing. I walk out back to the bar and see the lady talking to another server asking about the martinis and saying she thinks that I'm incompetent or whatever, while I'm standing 2 feet away. The bartender is also listening and doesn't say a word. I went to the back and started sobbing and told everyone I wasn't going back. I actually had a panic attack. One of our regulars sat in the bathroom with me trying to help me calm down. In the end, my manager let me go home because I was so embarrassed by the whole thing. I had never cried at work in the 2 years that I had been there, and everyone was so supportive, but I feel so stupid for getting upset by that. But let me know, who was the jerk in this situation? This story is exactly why I told myself that I would never work in the food or service industry, because people can be the biggest, most disgusting entitled jerks on the planet. It's like just because you bring someone food that you are automatically beneath them. I couldn't work in food because rude people would definitely be getting sneeze muffins. My manager made me tip out another server 20% out of my tips, and I want to know if I'm being unreasonable. To start, I should be clear, my fiance and I are in serious financial trouble. We are trying to financially recover from some medical emergencies, moving from my fiance's job, and him getting laid off for a while due to a strike that started a month after our move. Also, I haven't been a server or bartender for very long, so I'm not sure what the norms are for tipping out. I work at a sports bar. It's been insane lately and we are extremely understaffed. So when it got crazy last weekend, my manager had our closing waitress come in a little bit early. He told me after he called her that we would tip her out. I agreed since we had the majority of the tables, but also she ended up with quite a bit as well. All of my tables came at once, so they all left pretty much at the same time. At this point, I had no tables and the closer had most of the current guests. When my manager was getting ready to leave, I asked him how much I would have to tip out the server and he said 20%. I was pretty taken aback because that seemed like a lot. On top of that, the closing waitress is new and one of my orders had disappeared. I know it was her since she closed out my checks all the time even though I asked her to come and get me. I couldn't find my customer's meal and I had to put it in when I went to go check. The order was closed and someone had paid for that bill instead of their own. I asked my manager if we could give him a discount or something and he wasn't liking the idea, so I offered to pay for it myself, which is really stupid and I won't be doing that again. It all happened very fast and right in front of the customer, and I was just trying to make a mistake right. Then to add on to that, the guy from the kitchen keeps coming up to help us bus tables and such, which is awesome, but my manager said that I need to tip him $15 to $25. I'm fine tipping the kitchen guy out when it's super busy, but he started doing this even on days when it's really slow. I would rather bus my own tables and keep my tips when it's slow on those days. I don't get much tips anyways. Plus, on 2 separate occasions, the kitchen guy took someone's meal because they went to the restroom. When they got back, they were justifiably angry that the rest of their meal was thrown away, and both times they left me with no tip. I understand why they are angry, it just sucks that I'm the one that has to pay for the consequences. So now when it's super busy, I have to babysit my tables to make sure no one is taking their stuff. So with tipping out other waitresses, paying for a patron's meal, tipping out the kitchen guy, and tipping out the rest of the kitchen as usual, I lost a lot of tips. I asked the manager if I could talk with him in his office, but he refused to have the conversation away from the bar. It was really uncomfortable because the other waitress was right there. I told him I feel like I'm losing a lot of money on my tips. When we're essentially servers, bartenders, hosts, and bussers, I feel like I've earned most of my tips. He didn't yell or raise his voice, but it definitely felt confrontational in the way he was responding. He kept saying that she did 20% of the work and kept asking questions like, shouldn't you pay people for their work? Do you honestly think she didn't do at least 20%? It felt like I was being talked down to or being blamed for something. I asked him to calm down and he immediately relaxed and was like, I'm not yelling at you, you don't know yelling. I explained that it wasn't a fair comparison because we all help each other out. I help run his food and her food when I see it in the window. I help bust both of our tables when it needs to be done, so is she going to tip me out too? Even though I was busy, I still ran her food, made some of her drinks, and bust a few of her tables. What I'm saying is she probably did help me out a lot, but I helped her a lot too. In fact, I make most of her drinks because she's new and has never bartended before. So I don't feel like 20% is fair. I told him I would feel better about it if I wasn't also paying for someone else's meal, but he said that he was proud of me for taking accountability and that I was the one that offered. To be frank, I don't take accountability for that because it wasn't me. I was already upset from being yelled at by customers who had to wait, and also by losing so much of my tips, so I just told him that I didn't want to talk to him anymore. I was already tearing up and I didn't want to cry in front of anyone, so I just walked off. He followed me and kept trying to talk to me about it, but I was just done. I told him that I didn't appreciate how this was handled and that I didn't want to talk about it in front of the other waitress because I didn't want her to think I wasn't appreciative of her work. I was trying to walk away so I wouldn't cry, but he kept following me and wouldn't stop, and I ended up crying. To his credit, I will say that he did end up apologizing and said he will walk away to have conversations from now on, and that he really appreciates how hard I work. I let go of the 20%, but I've been home for the last 2 days and I can't stop thinking about this. I feel like it wasn't very fair and that I should have been able to keep more of my tip money. Am I being greedy? I have never asked her to tip me out for making her drinks. Also, not sure if it matters, but the new waitress is a friend of the manager. But let me know, am I the jerk? 20% does seem like a lot to give someone, on top of having to pay out a bunch of other people as well. Just another reason why I'm glad I never worked in the service industry. I know there are plenty of times that you can make a lot of money in a night, but I just think I'd rather not deal with entitled jerk customers and maybe bad coworkers too. Pizza Hut didn't want to give me my rewards. Turns out that I got an accidental malicious compliance. Settle in, I'm slightly pedantic and I can't help it. So I got nearly $32 in free Pizza Hut, but that's not the malicious compliance. I'm sharing this experience with you because they denied my request to put my free reward in a different pan and the ingredients on top of each other in a different order. I had questions, but they just turned around instead. Telling me to go order it online, I complied. So it's up to you to help me be malicious. I'm sharing this with you exactly how it happened. Tonight I went into Pizza Hut and had some of the Hut rewards to cash in. About 9x points, which qualified for free breadsticks or cheese sticks at 75 point redemption. I wanted a personal pan pizza, which is the exact same ingredients, but just in a round shaped pan placed in a different order. Actually, less amount of ingredients than it would have been with the cheese sticks. Seems like a very reasonable request. So I decided to go into the restaurant and ask if I could redeem the cheese sticks with my name online, but instead of the cheese sticks to make it a personal pan pizza. I even said, you know, it's less ingredients, it's just putting them in a different pan in a different order. They weren't busy, so I proposed this to the kid at the counter. He said, yeah, that shouldn't be a problem, let me ask my manager. Well, the manager said no. The item must be redeemed for an item that you choose. The kid followed up with, you have to redeem your points online, not here at the store. Yeah, I know, but I thought maybe we could make sure that I was redeeming it properly. But he turned away and started to busy himself doing nothing. So I went to my car. As I walked back to my car, I hit the redeem on the Hut rewards for the cheese sticks. Nothing pops up. No change in the page. I assumed it would go to the previous/new page or something like that. So I hit redeem again, nothing happened. Now I'm thinking maybe I have a bad signal in the zone, which I've had happen in that area before, so I hit redeem again. And then once more. Fearing I'm going to lose my redeem points, I hit the back button. It takes me back to the main rewards page with all of the options for redemptions and locked rewards. My account balance of 9x points were still there. Good, so I didn't lose them as I thought I would have. I see in my cart that I have one item, so I click the cart and proceed with checkout. I do recall seeing cheese sticks repeated 4 times on the order page, I believe. I'm not certain, but I do remember seeing something odd. I just don't think anything of it because I don't really pay attention to those pages. I picked contactless delivery because I didn't want to go into the store again. They had to bring it to my car. A different guy, the delivery guy, comes to my window holding 4 boxes of food and I was like, I just ordered 1. I think this is kind of weird because the person that was making the food was the person I spoke with earlier. He saw my point balance when I was making the request to him, and I figured that he would know I didn't have the ability to get 4 cheese stick orders. But he went ahead and made them anyways? He must have thought it was weird before he handed it off to the guy. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit that he would be thinking that deeply about any of this. I was handed the receipt and the delivery guy said, nope, your order says 4 orders of cheese sticks. Okay then. The receipt does say 4 orders of cheese sticks. The total was $31.96. coupon MXMXMX equals 31.36 and had a $0 balance. So I checked my points and I have like 19 points available. Those orders shouldn't have gone through. I don't have enough points to get more than one item, and that was the lowest tier item. I believe that clicking on the redeem button those 4 times then back to my cart without doing anything else means there's a little glitch in the programming, allowing for that item, no matter how many times I pressed it, to be redeemed for free. I don't have any more points to try this again. So those of you with hut rewards, try and see if you can get multiple of the same item for free. I'm curious to know if it works for you. Maybe next time they will wait and see if I have any more questions before shutting me down. Or if they could just place the ingredients in a different pan and in a different order, I wouldn't have left with the desire to go share this with 3 million people on how to get a crap ton of free pizza from Pizza Hut. But let me know. Am I the jerk? Now, there were some interesting comments left under this post from people that have worked in fast food. To be fair to Pizza Hut, they'd be limited to only giving you what the rewards list has. No crazy modifications to make it something else. They don't care about the ingredients used, they care about corporate and management coming down hard on them if they don't follow the rules. Another commenter said this, "Yup, I worked at Taco Bell, same parent company as Pizza Hut, and at TB, we have to make things as listed in the system. If we make them different by putting on different toppings or making it a different way, then we can get in trouble for that. We don't know if you're an actual customer or if you're just someone from corporate doing the monthly drive-by to test if we're actually making the food correctly. So we have to make all the food the way they want us to, or we might get in trouble with corporate when they do come by and get an order made in a different way than usual. Plus, there's specific amounts of each ingredient you're supposed to use. If you use more or less, then you mess up the ingredient counts they do every day. They ordered cheese sticks, but you wanted them in a personal pan pizza. Cheese sticks have a sauce dipping cup, but you would need more sauce on the pizza. It also doesn't have as much cheese as a pizza. It's more bread, but I believe they use different doughs, and they set those aside specifically for breadsticks or pizza. So them making a pizza instead of what was ordered messes up their counts of doughs that they had prepared. They would have one too many bread doughs than they should, and one too few pizza doughs than they should. Hope that makes sense. The last commenter said, "Worked at a place similar to Pizza Hut. I would much rather give you what you order than smaller altered orders. I made an hourly wage, so I don't benefit from the profit from this store at all. However, I had to look at the inventory and justify all spoilage, yada yada. And that was for a much smaller restaurant. They are probably super strict about this in bigger restaurants. But hey, let me know. Was the OP a jerk?" I relate heavily to the last commenter here because I'm the same way when I have to do big orders for a family or a group of friends. I just want to order a number 1, a number 3. I don't want to do a number 2, hold the onions, add mustard, but no ketchup and make sure there's extra pickles. That might be okay for a significant other, but not a whole group of people. So I can understand the complaints here. At the end of the day, fast food workers are there to do a job, and they just want to get through the day without a hassle. At least that's what I think.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.